The following program features a host who lives on nicotine and caffeine. The content may be as addictive as crack cocaine. If you subscribe now, we will keep giving you your fix. If not, you can keep scrounging around like a mangy dog scouring a post-apocalyptic world while looking over his shoulder for the zombies. Totally your call. Just kill the music already. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. You know that part of what I feel is important about doing what I do is that I feel like if I come across someone who is a smart attorney, good content creator, that if I can help bring him to your attention and help you find these people, because the need for a broad array of based alternative media is far too great for even the large number of people who are doing it to cover it adequately. And so it is my pleasure to bring to you, for the first time, making his debut on this show, David, aka Michigan Law Show. How are you, brother?
Good. And yourself?
I'm great.
Thank you for having me on. This is fun. I've never seen your opening. I always catch your live shows, but it's usually like 20 minutes in. I like your opening. I want to maybe take part of that.
I actually try to mix it up. It's like a different one. Like that's not the everyday one. Like I try to like mix it up. And for a while I was doing like a new one every single day, and that became really hard. That was like I gave myself too hard a task. And I'm embarrassed about how infrequently I make new ones. But I originally wanted to do a new one every day, like playing on the name, the following program, where it's I start with like the following program is like whatever. Because,
yeah.
You know, because that's the
intro.
Like
that was a lot of work, though. I have one and I play it over and over and over. And until YouTube decided that they're not going to recognize my license. So now I play it in reverse.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Yeah, no, it doesn't take that long. It's the originality and creativity of the different joke is like really the harder part. It takes like probably 20-25 minutes, maybe a half hour for me to actually, once I think of the angle I want to take, it takes me like under a half hour to kick it out. But it's a little bit of a nuisance. And how much standalone content do you do versus live?
So my channel is about 5 years old. By the way, it's MLS Law Show is the name of the channel.
Yeah.
So it's about 5 years old. And about 5 years ago, I had a lot of sort of scripted stuff where my brother and I or someone else, we would kind of read and do a teleprompter, and we'd spend all the hours editing it. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of got really annoying and time consuming. So I stopped doing it for a while. And then I started streaming, or not streaming, just watching trials. Like I started with Rittenhouse and things like that. And I said, I'm sitting here all day while I'm working, watching these trials. I might as well stream them. And so I've been doing that for the last few months. I did some January 6th, the committee hearings back in, what was that, last year when they were running those?
Last summer.
Yeah. So that was really my first live stream, I think was that sort of stuff. And then started streaming the trials. And I've been doing some other stuff. I had a live stream earlier today with a layman from Denmark who's like a professional juror, and to try to talk about a little bit about the differences between their system and ours, and things like that.
So you said you've been doing this for like 5 years now, and but the reason I asked you that question as far as standalone stuff is because basically if you when you're doing standalone, when you're doing like pre-recorded, they upload, that's essentially what I'm doing with the intro. And it's like a 30-second thing, but like the whole video editing, things like that. How do you consider yourself proficient at that you can just sort of kick something like that out like easily, or is it something that like all those boomer attorneys you're just sort of like struggling with?
No, I'm okay with it. That sort of stuff is fine. The intro, now that I have sort of the base, I could probably edit it out fairly quickly. But I've been working on a video. It's about an hour and a half long, and it's following the closing arguments and the Zachariah Anderson, and it's just really tedious. And I'm somewhat of a perfectionist with that, so it's I guess at one point I give up on the effort, and I'm like, okay, it's good enough. And so when I reach that point, I'm okay with it at that point. But it's I don't know. It just depends, I guess, on what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, and well, my point is that when I'm in a groove, like I'm doing it like on a regular basis, it feels much easier than if I haven't done it in like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm like, oh my God, I don't remember how to do that anymore. You know what I'm saying? So like that. So that's...
I have a video editor, and I have Photoshop and all that stuff. And when I was doing the streams for a while, it was nice. I could cut them and splice them and put in the sound and do all that stuff. And then I had to relearn it again because I put off doing it for a few months. And then, yeah, you're right. You got to stay on top of it. Otherwise you forget all the little tricks and tools.
So yeah. And that's why when I was, that's why like now I don't think I've done a new one in like 2 or 3 months. I have on my in my brand there. So, I have pre-recorded stuff. I have like 85 different intros in there that I've just sort of like been rotating through. And yeah, so that's what I'm like, which one have I not seen in a while? But anyway, but you were telling me before we started here that you were covering the Letitia Stouch trial, right?
Letitia Stouch, yeah.
I always call it Stouch. But
Stouch. Her defense attorneys didn't even get her name right half the time, and every time they mentioned it, it was a different sounding. So you're fine. Yeah, that was a crazy case. It was either that or Daybell, and because Daybell was audio only, I didn't want to cover it. I thought that would be kind of annoying. So I started streaming that, and if nobody knows, it's a Colorado woman who was convicted of murdering her stepson, 12-year-old stepson, which sounds like a kind of a horrible case to try. But she claimed not guilty by reason of insanity, that she has DID, dissociative identity disorder, essentially multiple personality disorder. And so it was her multiple personalities, and those were hilarious. We had little Lucia. We had Maria Sanchez, the Spanish-speaking, Russian-trained assassin, and she's the one that actually killed Gannon. And it was because there was some man in a cape in the room that Maria Sanchez was trying to attack and accidentally killed Gannon, but then was going to take him to Florida because there's a necromancer there that brought Tupac back. And so that's how she was going to save the day. So it got really interesting towards the end. But what was even more interesting is her expert witness, this Dr. Lewis, literally wrote the book on the insanity defense, and she started practicing back in the 70s. So I actually streamed her. There's a documentary about her expert witness, Dr. Lewis, and I streamed that on my Rumble. And she is like just as crazy as probably most of her clients. So that was even more interesting. But it didn't work. She was convicted.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people think that when these people, if they're a successful not guilty, in that case means they walk free, but that's not actually what happens, right? I mean, normally they end up spending the rest of their life in a sanatorium.
Yeah, and I would tell people that would pop up and be like, I don't want her to get off. And I used an example of a client of mine who was on, remember K2 when that was out, or the bath salts, that synthetic marijuana stuff that would really mess with you. He was on that and burnt down his parents' house, and he was being charged with arson. And in Michigan, even felony arson, okay, you get maybe 5 years. Well, he ended up pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. He's still in there, and it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And so it's not, sometimes you end up doing a lot more time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because you have to basically show that you're actually sane. And especially I think if someone says that they have multiple personality disorder or something, similar to that, like DID, like even if you end up spending a week as like yourself, like how do you show that other personality is gone altogether? Like,
you're not getting past that. That just exists for your life now, and you will die in a rubber padded cell instead of a concrete one.
Right. So, like, even if she had gotten off, like, that vampire is still lurking within her, I guess. So-
Yeah, it just got so dumb. And then I will say though that the trial was like a huge disappointment at every turn, because so there was a lot of recorded phone calls between her and her husband. Her husband was working with the FBI, and they would like record them. We're like, okay, cool, we're gonna hear some shenanigans, and you did, but then it went on for 12 hours of recordings they played during this trial.
Oh my God.
And it was just like, it like hurt your head,
Yeah.
at the end of it when Friday rolled around, and thank God we were done for the week. And so that was disappointing. And then when we were like, when Dr. Lewis was on the stand saying, I interviewed her, it's recorded, and Maria Sanchez made an appearance, we're all excited for it. And then the audio quality is bad. You can't see the video very well. And I'm like, oh man, just yeah. So it was a little bit of a letdown, but it was fun. Just the facts were fun.
Did you cover the Depp trial?
No. I watched it. I probably watched you watching it.
Because the Depp trial, when we were watching it, like the worst parts when they had the recorded depositions, it's like you just wanted to shoot yourself in the head. Like, and if it would go on for like an hour or 2 hours, and what's her face? What was her name? That female, Elaine Bradenhoff.
Oh yeah,
like she would ask at these depositions like the same question 14 times, and you just wanted to, and like talking to a security guard, like this is like so like the most inane.
I love the security guard that was driving while he's doing the
yeah, that guy was great. That's like the police who showed up to the house after the report was filed, and like what they saw, and it would just go on for 4 hours. And the reason I just thought of that is because I know that when you're covering a trial, the pre-recorded stuff is torture. It's like you feel like you're driving through a desert. You don't know when that desert's going to end. And it's like there's just this desert of boring, dead, awful stuff. That's part of the problem with like when you're streaming trials.
Well, and the listeners get to maybe walk away from it, turn the sound down. It's in our headphones the entire time.
Yeah.
And you can't turn it down or walk away because you don't know what's coming up next. And you're like, oh my God, did he say it was an hour and a half or just a half hour? How long are we into this? Oh my, when are we done?
Yeah. And you have to sit there like providing some sort of commentary. So you actually have to somewhat like pay attention.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there drooling. I mean, you sort of have to do something. It's
the amount we suffer for our audience.
People don't realize. They really don't. They think that this is such a cushy job. The whole decision making on like picking trials. You're talking about deciding between the Stout case and the Daybell case. It's really hard because you can totally pick wrong, and if you pick wrong, you're trapped in that trial because no one wants to walk away from a trial. It's basically like saying, okay, I bought this book and I'm never going to finish it. Like the book beat me. But it's to the public, because some people in the public are actually, there might be a handful of your audience which really wants you to keep watching it, and you're like, oh God, I made this commitment to this stupid trial and it sucks. It's awful.
I'm so glad. So I would listen to Danny and Direct when I was done with my trial stream for Letitia. I would listen to her doing the audio on Daybell, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't pick that case. But this was bad enough, but it's just the audio only is just rough.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Sarah Boone next. Actually, will probably be my next live stream. Unless there's something else coming up. I know we have, I don't know, we have some trials coming up. Yeah, but you're trying to pick them, and you're hoping you don't pick wrong, and it's entertaining, and you can make fun with it, and it's not, Someone suggested in my Discord earlier a case involving another child. And I was like, can we just let's maybe skip the child cases? We'll go with something more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you just feel like outrage and anger, and when you're feeling like that, it's frustrating enough when you feel that way when you see a defendant who's being like messed over, or a rogue prosecutor, or you see or when you see bad lawyering in general. When I'm watching bad lawyering, I'm just like, stop doing that. Stop doing that.
Yeah, that's what we had in the Letitia Stout case. The lawyer literally at the opening statement, he said, I've seen all of your jury questionnaires. I understand you think he literally said, that I'm full of shit by bringing this defense, and she's already guilty, and walked out the courtroom. He walked out the courtroom during his opening statement, and I know what he was trying to get at, but he has like no discernible personality. We called him Eeyore throughout the trial. He was like an Eeyore. It was just, woe is me. It came off that way. And then he walked, but I can't quit. He was making it about himself. It's like, no. There's so many better ways to bring this defense.
Yeah.
You just kind of want to reach through the screen and grab him.
Anyway, so I think there's a lot going on in the world. Over the last 48 hours or so, there's just been a lot of big legal news that has popped. So like this morning, when Dave texted me, he's like, "So we're going to cover it tonight," and I'm like, "I don't even know where to start." Like I got so many things that are popping off on my feed here that I don't even know. I was like, I don't want to like overload him. Like I mentioned the Durham report, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna go." He's like jumping right in. He's like, "Give me that book," and I'm just gonna sit here reading that.
As I'm staring at the stat, I do work, by the way. I am a practicing still attorney, so I'm like sitting here and looking at the motions. I got a draft, and you send me the Durham report.
I said don't. I felt so bad. I was like, this guy is gonna come in preparing for this show by reading 300 pages for this show. Like I wouldn't go on a channel that was like 50 times my size if you made me read a book in a day. I'd just be like, nah. No, thanks.
I wasn't going to read it. I was going to come in completely unprepared if you were talking about that.
Yeah, but there's enough other stuff to talk about that I wanted to go over with you. You've been following Kari Lake?
Yeah, actually, I watched the opening statements and some of the testimony, at least the first two witnesses. That's interesting. First of all, I'm very happy to hear that it's actually a trial going forward, because all these cases have been summarily dismissed from the get-go. And I've followed the Michigan ones with the 2020 election a lot. And I was disappointed that those got dismissed, as well as the 2022. We had some election stuff with in the primaries, and all those cases got summarily dismissed as well. But I'm happy that there's an actual trial going forward on this. So we have discovery and we have all these things. And I find it's an exercise in attorneys spinning the language of the statute. That's really what this comes down to. Is it that they have to confirm the signatures are a match, or is it that they have to
confirm that the process was done at all?
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying. It seems so arbitrary. I mean, like there was a motion. So we should probably apprise the audience as to like what was happening with respect to motion practices and things of that nature, and try and distinguish this from the last trial hearing that she had on this about this election that was like 4 or 5 months ago. So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I have like a cursory, I've been following this on like a cursory sort of level. From what I understand, she basically won an appeal that when she first brought her action, she had like 7 different bases, and that she only was allowed to proceed by the trial court on one level. And she appealed on the other ones that she lost, and on one of them, and she got back in, was count 3. So since she won on appeal on count 3, that enables her now to that got sent back down to the trial court for them to address it, and that led to this whole hearing that was happening. But even leading up to this hearing, the question is, okay, exactly what claims are going to be proceeding here? And a large part of it is parsing out Kari Lake's complaint. And from what I understand, basically Kari Lake, the judge said that Kari was reading the complaint rather narrowly, and saying that that Kari Lake is alleging that there are 3 levels of review of signatures. So when a ballot comes in and they want to verify the signature, and it comes in by mail-in voting, so they want to verify the signature. So there's 3 different levels of review, and apparently the judge was interpreting it as at levels 2, and that she was saying there was no verification done at levels 2 and 3 at all. That's how he was reading her complaint, which seems to be a ridiculous way to read it, as opposed to, there could be there could have been something going. There could have been some sort of pro forma, appearance of there being a good faith verification at levels 2 and 3, but not for all the ballots. And for a significant number of them, I think they came up with like up to like 300,000. There really was no real actual verification. In fact, I think they showed video that when people when people were going through it,
they were just sitting there like this. And that's what they said.
The button was like next screen. They're like, look at one to verify, and then the next one to verify, and the next one to verify, right? And they're just hitting the button like a monkey, just sitting there, tap, 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 tap. Like how many verified, without it having time to even process and hit his eyes.
Do you ever do doc review? When you first got out of law school?
Yeah, no, I was private. I was working for small firms from the day it came out, so I always did doc.
Well, I mean, like the big things for like, Kelly or Deloitte or something.
No.
I did that right out of law school, and that's what I had flashbacks of. And so you sit there and you got two computer screens, and these are for people don't know. When you have like substantial litigation, like this was a couple that I did was like class action regarding some airline ticket purchasing thing, and another one was like class action regarding hip replacements and stuff. And so when there's a discovery request that comes in and the other side literally has millions of documents, they'll hire a bunch of licensed attorneys that don't have anything else better to do to go through and code the documents. And you're supposed to be searching for like keywords or certain things or whatever it might be. So you pull it up, then you have to review the document, and then you tab whether or not it contains that word or that image or it's this or that. But it's mind-numbing. It's so mind-numbing. And I have to admit, I probably wasn't the best because I would just sort of quickly skim it and go, quickly skim it and go. And that's what I had sort of flashbacks of watching that. And I see the guy just like looking at it. Yep. They weren't reviewing it. He said he timed it out and there were less than 3 seconds of review of a signature.
Right.
That's at stage 1.
Right.
And then it goes up. If you reject it, it goes up to stage 2. But stage 2 was getting so many rejections, they just cycle it back to stage 1 and hope that it gets passed through without even double checking it at stage 2. And so the idea is that you're supposed to match the signature on the mail-in ballot with the registration card or some other matching signature. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to more or less conform with the signature. And that's what they were arguing, is that you can't possibly review a signature like that in less than 3 seconds.
And that's why, and they actually showed two people sitting side by side, and you see the counter going up as each one are going to the next one. And the one who's doing it properly, or far slower at least, it's like you see that his counter goes 1, 2, and the other one is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and like they're literally 8 times as fast as that person. Where there's like literally like they were up to like document page 48 when the guy's at page 6, and you're like, come on. Come on. Because and then the disparity there is what really shows you how ridiculous it is that if someone actually cares about doing their job versus someone who cares about processing, clicking off as many as possible, you can see the gross disparity there, which shows what bad faith was being used, at least by some of the people, as opposed to others who certainly seem to be showing some good faith. But the problem is, and this is the key part as far as how the judge was reading her complaint and going forward in this hearing. When the judge is saying what parts he's going to focus on, he's essentially writing the rules of the game. He's writing what the objective is in order for you to win. So it's almost like if you open up your instructions to a brand new game, and they tell you the object of the game is to get 10 points or 20 points or 100 points, whatever it is. That's the object of the game. Is be the first to finish. Whatever that object of the game is, that's what the judge is essentially writing when he's giving a decision on these motions, because he's saying this is what your object is. And if the objective is ridiculous, that as soon as Katie Hobbs can show anything positive for her, that Kari has zero. She's walking into that trial with no chance of success, as opposed to if the objective is a completely different yardstick of that you have to establish that there was a sufficient number of ballots to overturn the election that were improperly processed. Well, all of a sudden now that's a whole different that's a whole different game they're playing in the trial.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to. So her attorneys were sanctioned for making false claims that 35,000 ballots were added that shouldn't have been. And I think they're really trying to prove that we've got the numbers here, and they're just trying to do the math. It seemed like that was a lot of the testimony that was brought out, at least today, is looking at the raw data with the level 1 reviewer, but she got like extra work because she was good.
Right.
And they're just trying to pull out, okay, so how does this process work? And, and you process so many things through, and that they were kicked back down without any secondary review and things like that. I think they're just trying to get that math working right.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Robert Gouveia, by the way?
No, I'm not. Sorry.
He's an attorney from Arizona, and he has a show. He calls the show "Watching the Watchers." And
I do know Watching the Watchers.
Yeah,
I know the show. Yeah.
So he's live streaming this trial, and I want to recommend to you and my entire audience, if you're not signed up to him yet, you should be, because the guy he's a smart attorney, he's a great content creator, and he cares about finding truth. That's what the whole point of Watching the Watchers is, that he's basically he cares about government oversight and making sure that things are done properly. So I
know his face now. As soon as I pulled it up, I know him. Yep.
He used to be known as Robert Gruler, which I think, but he embraced Robert Gouveia. But so I just want to recommend to all of you, if you want to be watching the trial rather than watching it on by yourself, you can have a guy, you can have the best in the business, and he happens to be from Arizona himself, so he has a vested interest in this, and his coverage is just exceptional. So I highly recommend.
I see the chat. Why can't we vote with cell phones yet? Because it's not American Idol.
Can you imagine how messed up? Can you imagine vote by cell phone? Who's saying that? Someone actually asked
It's
that.
One of mine.
Oh,
young man. Why can't we vote by cell phones yet?
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I tell you something. The process that we have now is with this rampant mail-in balloting. So it's just, I mean, the left has said for decades that this is the most easily corruptible system in the world when you have mail-in ballots. And now that they've got their voters all signed up for it, so they can't pump it out hard enough. And I personally think that it's like a terrible mistake that the right has made in saying, no, go in on election day, only don't vote by mail, go on election day. I'm like, why would you do that? Why not send in mail-in ballots? You don't have to drop in the mail if you're concerned about your local mailman being too far left to actually deliver it from your house. But you can, go to a mail-in center and, some ballot drop place and drop it off there. I think it's a terrible mistake that the right has made. There's so many different tactics that the left uses with respect to elections that the right completely shuns, and it leaves us like handicapped. Like, you're like, why would you leave yourself subject to Katie Hobbs, like tinkering with machines or something?
I understand the motivation behind, we're going to rise above. We're not going to play to their tactics. But they're losing. Yeah. And yeah, that's a problem. I don't necessarily see a fundamental issue with mail-in ballots. My parents mail in their ballots, or they do the mail-in ballots, but they physically take them to the polling place rather than sending them in the mail. Again, there's no issue with that, as long as it's done and people have faith in the system. I think the problem is that if you go back to the 2020 election, in particular here in Michigan, in Wayne County in Detroit, there was a lot of issues about how many ballots were left out. There were some people on camera that appeared to be wheeling in extra ballots. At least that's the allegation that was made. Whatever you want to say, whatever allegations you want to make, keep it open it up. Daylight is the best cleanser. So if you want people to trust the system, then open it up a little bit. And that was my big issue.
I'm just going to pause and say YouTube wants me to tell you that our 2020 election was perfectly valid, fair, and proper. Every vote was counted properly, and every election was what that we've had in this country has been perfect and flawless. So please go out and vote, and do not take from this video, this show, or this channel any message about any issues with any election we've ever had. That's what YouTube wants me to tell you, and I am.
Did I go too far? No, I'm trying to stay above board with it. I'm like, honestly, I don't care what you think happened. I'm just saying that if there's more transparency, then more people can trust the system. And I think that's the problem, is that people don't trust the system. And so that's what
I'm a big believer in the need for the not just integrity, but the transparency about the integrity, so that everyone can feel confident that, and this is something that I say, I'm talking going forward. I'm just urging. I'm not talking about anything in the past or saying that there was any muckraking that was happening there, or whatever word from the 1950s I can come up with, whatever gobbledygook I can come up with. But what I'm saying is, if we want to have a healthy country, how can that possibly happen if people have reasons to have doubt? If someone thinks that you're cheating at cards, right? So you're doing something. Why is it that magicians, like, it's a big thing, like they'll roll up their sleeves, right? It's to give the appearance, to make it clear as much as they can that they have transparency, that I'm not hiding anything up my sleeve. When you walk in there with just like, and you set up the system in such a way, you're saying you can't stand within 100 yards of us if you're in Philadelphia. You can't have oversight. We'll put up boards to block views of things. All this stuff just leads Americans who lose in that state to basically say something there was going on that was funky.
And we don't know because we don't have access, and now I don't trust the system.
Right. So if we were going to have a healthy country, the only way that we can possibly proceed in that direction is if we actually have not just integrity, but transparency about that integrity. I'm totally down with that 100%.
Yeah. And I will add also communication from the election boards to the candidates and everything else. That was a big issue in our primary, for our gubernatorial primary this past cycle here in Michigan. Just with ballot signatures. We had a huge candidate who was our former Detroit police chief, and he lost in the primaries mainly he didn't even get it to the primaries because the ballots were disqualified as ballot signatures, because apparently there were some canvassers that were banned by the election committee. They weren't allowed to canvass anymore. Nobody told the candidates. Would have been nice to have a heads up. Maybe don't send these guys out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, just transparency and communication.
I don't know how you still live in Michigan. I'm not going to kid you. I'm serious.
I like the water.
Okay. All right. You pay a heavy price for the water there. You mean the drinking water, the fishing water, or all of
the Great Lakes? I like the Great Lakes. I like no sharks, salt free. Go sailing.
You have arguably the worst governor in the country.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. I sued her.
Did you really?
Yeah, when COVID started, I sued her. I was the first to sue her. And
really?
We sued her, Nessel, the Attorney General, and the DNR when they locked down everybody and said you couldn't go to your second homes and you had to stay indoors. You couldn't even mow your lawn. In my argument, I said, you can't go outdoors unless you're engaging in a recreation or a physical activity. I said, with that definition, Judge, somebody's guilty of violating this if they have a riding lawnmower because they're not engaged in a physical, they're sitting on a lawnmower, Yeah, so I was the first to sue her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is.
And I feel like we won, even though it ended up being dismissed. I sued her and I said like 8 or 9 things were violations. And then immediately after she was served, like the next day, within 24 hours, she ended up releasing like 5 of them. Like, you could go back to your home. You could go use the public lands again. Because I was like, we can't go to, a state forest, in the middle of COVID. You can't access a navigable waterway.
Yeah.
All these things. So they released 5 of them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to call that a small victory.
Yeah, that's a win.
Yeah.
So
That's my tangles with the governor.
And then you had your Prop 2 and Prop 3 that came up in the last election there, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? One of them was about, one of them was about voting, right? Was that, from what I recall? I remember I was talking to, do you know, what's his name? Michigan, that other guy from Michigan who's a big, he was very big on fighting for, oh my gosh,
There's Leto, there's, what's his name? God, I can't think of his name.
All right. There's Adam DeAngelis is the guy I'm thinking about. He's from Rescue, Michigan.
Oh, is he? No, I don't know him. That's not who I was thinking of.
Yeah. So see, he's from Rescue, Michigan. I've had him on the show here a couple of times. He's not an attorney. He's an advocate who organizes to fight for the civil rights of Michiganders. Okay. And that case with that young man who was charged with sending a nasty Snapchat message.
It wasn't even nasty. I was gonna cover that. I had cameras in the courtroom. I was the only cameras in the courtroom, and then
really,
he fled. Yeah, I was the only cameras in there. There's St. Marie, Michigan.
I don't know why I'm drawing blank on the kid's name.
I know, me too. I probably have a file.
I've had him on my show.
Did you?
Yes.
I was going to cover that.
I had his first. I had Adam and his father on. But that was when he was on. When he was not allowed to access the internet when he was under house arrest. And then after he struck his deal, so I had him and his attorney on. Great young man. Why am I drawing a blank
why he struck
here?
the deal. I was disappointed because
it was totally the right deal, David.
It was totally. If I was his defense attorney, I would have told him to take the deal.
Yeah, come on.
That was great for him. I just, from what I heard, the deals were all passed up and there weren't going to be any more. So we literally had cameras set up, ready to go in the courtroom. I'd gone up there the day prior to the deal to make sure we had everything run for it, and
Gerhardt.
It was good
that
for
was
him.
it.
Gerhardt. Yeah, that's
Gerhardt.
his name. Yeah,
right.
Wasn't even a nasty.
It wasn't
a nasty.
It wasn't. It was. I'm gonna. It was a Snapchat message about melting snowflakes, and it was a picture of it. It was a picture of his AR-15
sent to his friend, not even the quote victim.
Right. Which cannot. I don't understand how that could possibly be a threat if it's not sent to the person. Like that does, or intended to be conveyed to them
over the shoulder or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that was a travesty. But I'm saying is, you're living in such a police state there in Michigan. I think it's worse. I think it's as bad as California or New York. I think it. I mean, you saw how they turned out for abortion, basically, and they even, and that was another part, I think, of Proposition 3 was that they basically went so far on gender affirming care. It's just like that state, I think, is irrevocably blue with the laws that they pass as far as enabling. What's the word I want to use that I'm not going to get kicked off? Well, enabling
policies of a certain persuasion.
Policies related to November events that basically make it very easy for anyone to do anything they want in November. So go hog wild Thanksgiving time or a couple of weeks before.
Well, okay, so they have both houses and the governor's office, and they are going crazy. I get that. But in order for it to get better, we need people to stick around, like myself and others, and fight the good fight. So that's what we're trying to do. I'll say it that way. I'm not going to run from this great state. We're gonna make it better. That's my plan.
Really? Then you definitely should hook up with Adam DeAngelis because he has the same mindset as you have. That he's
I will.
We're gonna turn this place around. So, but speaking of states, we talk about control of the legislature. Did you see what happened in North Carolina? I didn't throw this at you beforehand, but did you see what happened with them overriding a veto?
Sounds familiar. What happened?
This just came out. Yeah. So apparently, the North Carolina legislature, the Republicans hold exactly 60% of the legislature, and they passed a bill. It passed quickly to ban abortions after 12 weeks.
Yep.
And the governor is a Democrat who basically was like, not happening here, no way. So he vetoed it, and snap, they overrode his veto. When do you ever hear something like that happening? Like overriding a veto? You're like, oh my God.
Rare. You need the numbers. That's the problem, is you need the numbers. There's 60% apparently there is enough. I think it's probably the same here too. No, that's I like that kind of power. The thing I don't like with, I don't know if it's the same in North Carolina, but it is in Michigan. We have line item veto ability. The governor can literally line item veto and create statutes.
Wow.
With line item vetoes. And so I don't like that. And I really wish there's some things that went through that we had the numbers to kind of to veto that way. No, good for them. Glad they're able to do that. Glad they had the numbers. It's interesting when you have that much, that many Republicans in a legislature, but then a Democrat governor. I wonder how that happens.
That's what makes veto so weird, right? Because if you think about it, they basically have to be voting in opposite directions with respect to governor versus 60% of them are Republicans. That's why it never happens, because normally you would have a situation like in Florida where you have a super majority in the legislature, and you have a Republicans, and you have your Republican governor, where you can't see Florida going blue anytime in the next several decades at this point. But as opposed to in New York, it's everything is the opposite. It's always everything's blue. You can't win anything. You can't win a judgeship here. You can't win anything if you're in New York City. Certainly, I mean, upstate New York is a little bit redder, but yeah, you can't win anything at all if you're a Republican in New York.
Like Chicago, where you have liberal Democrats and conservative Democrats, but they're all Democrats. It's that kind of the thing.
Yeah. Although,
well, I grew up, when I grew up in Michigan, it was very red, more red than this, even though it's still a blue collar. It's a blue collar state for sure, but it was still wasn't all blue. And I was talking to the Detroit police commissioner, was on my stream yesterday, and I was saying what's interesting about Detroit itself is even though it's a bigger city, it's a Midwestern city. Like they're talking about no gun zones in certain areas of downtown, and everyone's against it. Like the Detroit police commissioner is against it, and a lot of residents are against it because they're all lawful gun owners, and it's very much a weird Midwestern town kind of feel, even though it's a major city. And so I have hopes for Michigan. I don't see it all gone yet. It's not as blue as maybe it looks from the outside, although our politics would definitely beg to differ. I think they're going to hurt, though. I think they're going to hurt in a couple of years with the next election cycle because of some of the stuff they're putting through. Yeah. There's a lot of things they're putting through that people don't like. The red flag laws and stuff that they've been passing on both sides of the aisle don't like it at all.
Well, I definitely agree with you that you can't just say a Democrat is Democrat is Democrat. Or the same way you can't say Republican is Republican, because I think that a Democrat or like a blue city in New York or Chicago or LA is not nearly the same thing as a blue city of Houston. It's just not the same thing at all. They don't stand like the basis of where they're coming from is in a blue city in Houston is far less about woke. And it's more a matter. You have to recognize the Democratic Party. I'm talking really the audience more than you, because I'm sure you know this. The Democratic Party is basically cobbling together a whole bunch of different groups of people who feel like they've been disaffected or victims in one way or another. So they try to cater to minorities, whether they're blacks or Latino or some sort of spectrum like LGBTQ or whatever, and then they'll try and they try to cobble these different groups together, and the interests of these different groups are frequently clashing with each other. I mean, most notably, everyone's seen with feminists versus the trans community, but
I can get real world for you, at least in Michigan. We passed. Michigan legislator, Democratic controlled legislator, passed a law that revoked right to work And so if you're in a closed union shop, you must join the union. This is a blue collar union town. A lot of people like that, although I don't think it's good. But those same union people that like that are not liking the red flag laws, are not liking a lot of these other laws. And when you try to cobble together people like that, like you were saying, now they're in a really tough spot. And I think they're just making their position even harder to sustain the next election cycle. But that's not even the extremists, the woke community. These are just real people that are pro-union and also pro-gun. What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, it's a tough spot that they're in. And I think that what ends up happening is, so people assume that you'll see a blue city like Detroit, so that must be very woke. When in fact, if the blue city is primarily black people rather than rich elitists will be all along with going woke. But if it's primarily, an underprivileged black community, you see a lot of them, most of them have certainly with the older demographic, are going to have more of an old school type of values type of thing, where it's like, you picture like an older black man or older black woman, they tend to be that most of their values are going to align far more with the right than with the left. It's simply a matter of that they're just sort of hardwired to vote blue no matter who. But the problem is, the question is there a breaking point on their whole vote blue no matter who, the way they're basically like, I can't stand behind this garbage anymore. And I don't know if there is.
I don't know if there's a breaking point. My thought was a strong third party would be great. Not the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or whatever. They're just not strong enough, but a good, strong third party. And when we have the last couple of years, if the politicians, in my opinion, had their senses about them, I feel like you could have taken the left-leaning Republicans and the right-leaning Democrats and would have made a strong third party. But I don't, historically, third parties don't last too long. So we would have ended up with the 2-cycle again. But I thought it was a good opportunity in the last couple of years, but I never saw any movement on it. It was just sort of a thought. But I think there was an opportunity to do that. And I don't know if it's still there.
I think rather than a third party, I think that perhaps that we were looking at an opportunity for a 4-party, like where both the Republican and Democratic parties were each split, because the progressives don't like the corporate Democrats, and they're constantly at odds with each other. I stand far more with a MAGA type of perspective than I ever will stand with the corporate rhinos. I can't stand the corporate rhinos. So, if in fact we actually could get to a place in this country where there were where one party saw the other party split and they both split at the same time, you sort of feel like, okay, if we actually split 4 ways, now we can start finding some sort of politicians who we are actually voting for rather than voting against the person who we hate.
But remember, we're dealing with politicians. So as soon as they see one party split, the other party is like, well, we got this then because we're the majority. We're not splitting. That's why I thought the third party, get the third party together, because then you're taking literally half of the two and they'd have to get together.
But what you're describing to me just sounds like, frankly, I feel as if that third party you're describing is already running Washington, D.C. I really feel like they are, because I don't see much difference between Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I don't see any difference. As far as politically, yeah, fine. One's going to say, protect our gun, strip your gun rights. The other's going to say, no, don't, we'll basically say Second Amendment shall not be infringed. But but they don't actually mean it. If they came from a different state, if they flip-flop states, they would flip-flop opinions. It's all a matter of the only interest in their own power. That's why it's a Uni-party, where they basically are like, okay, I'm going to say my talking points, you're going to say your talking points, and we'll both try to win our next election. And we'll have a dog and pony show, or we'll have a Senate congressional hearing, or and we'll make our 5-minute speech that someone wrote for us to say, where we'll yell at someone and pretend that we're asking them a question. We're not asking a question. And then we're going to say, look how I fought for for pro-life, or look how I fought to get rid of guns. And that's what each party is going to be talking to their base on that. Now vote for me, otherwise they're going to be stripping your right to abort to abort every fetus that ever came to the planet, or vote for me, or else your guns are being taken away. They all know what their parties want them to say, but they don't believe it. Look at what Lindsey Graham did before the 2022 election. In October, he's floating out there a national abortion ban. He destroyed Michigan for you. Do you realize that the reason you don't have Tudor as your leader right now is because he basically he saw the Dobbs decision come out in June, and then he comes along and he basically says, you know what, let's start floating out the idea of having a national abortion ban at 15 weeks. Like, who in their right mind really thought for a second? Do you think he's so stupid that he actually thought that might pass? Did he think that that's going to rally the base to come out in November, or was it far more predictably going to get all the crazy feminazis to come running out there screaming, oh my God, they're going to take away our right to abort our kids, and they'll start voting like lunatics? And I feel like he shot the Republican Party in the foot and destroyed the red wave single-handedly.
Yeah, particularly for Tudor Dixon in Michigan, she should have stayed away from that. That's an issue for the legislature. I'm not running for that. I'm running for governor. Mm-hmm. You take it up with them. Mm-hmm. And that would have been but that's essentially what killed her campaign.
Yeah, it really did, because she came out so hardline pro-life that she was taking a position that is based and yet exceedingly rare, especially in such a what is objectively a deep blue state. And not only did she lose, but basically, they basically took away the ability. I think from what I don't remember which proposition it was, but they basically took away the chances of ever banning abortion in Michigan. I think it has to be. Do you remember what the proposition was? Because it was Adam DeAngelis who pointed this out.
Yeah, I don't remember the number, but it's now in our Constitution, so we'd have to do a constitutional amendment to do anything. So now it's part of our Constitution. It's not just a piece of legislation that was passed. And they do, things like that with the, common sense gun reform that they brought forward. They put it as part of a spending bill. So you can't do the normal reformation process to kind of veto it, for the citizens to veto it. And, things like that. But the Republicans really screwed up in a number of ways. We had gerrymandering going on.
Gerrymandering?
Yeah, well, we had the census come out and they're redrawing the district lines and things like that.
How did you pronounce that word? Because you said
gerrymandering.
Really?
I don't know. How do you pronounce it?
Gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering. Okay, we call it gerrymandering.
No, I'm just wondering if that's like a Michigander thing.
Probably. I pronounce milk with an E and not an I. It's a thing.
Wait, say it again.
Milk.
Oh, milk. You're saying milk. Yeah. No, it's okay.
And we put an S after everything as well.
All right.
But no, so the Republicans are in control of that. We lost seats.
You're done. You're such a crazy optimist that you think Michigan's ever going to change. You're such a crazy optimist.
I want to, every once in a mind,
dude, you're out of your
running
mind.
A marathon.
You're crazy.
We tripped.
It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. You're never winning anything there ever again. Listen. Look. Go. Where do you live? I'm going on Zillow. I'm going to find how much you can sell your house for. We'll find you a nice lake in like a red state. But this is just give it up. There's no way you're going to find peace and tranquility.
My thought is, if I was to move out, I'm going to Galveston, Texas. But who the hell knows what's going on in Texas anymore?
No, it's red. It's red. Stop worrying about Texas. I mean, Governor Abbott, I think, is basically, he's a DeSantis wannabe. Like, it's like, oh, Ron did that. Let me try this now. It's 2 months later. Anything he sees DeSantis get away with, he tries passing there. But I mean, it's red for now. Who knows? It's hard to tell once the illegals who are flooding our border, when
they get the right to vote.
Yeah, when they get the right to vote, I don't know what's going to happen in Texas.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I have hopes for Michigan. We're gonna bring it back. We're gonna bring it back.
You're gonna make Michigan great again.
That's right. That's right.
Good luck with that plan. Good luck.
Maybe I'll just go down to Ohio.
Ohio's not bad.
Ohio's not bad. We got a lake there, or they have a lake there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just get right on Lake Erie there. You know, Cleveland. Cleveland's good. Actually, Cleveland's a nice town. I like Cleveland. It's very Midwestern.
Well, effing Dave is from Michigan. Well, he says, I lived in Michigan all my 45 years, mostly outside of small town south of Lansing. This state used to be awesome. The government on both sides of the aisle has failed us over the years. Yeah, well, good luck trying to change that.
We'll get together. We'll make it happen. Hastings is awesome, by the way. That's south of Lansing.
Yeah, I really look at Michigan as basically California of the North. Yeah, I think it's gone.
We had concerns with Granholm. Now she's at the federal level, and now we have Witless, and she's something else. But
we could just thank God that she survived that attempted kidnapping. Thank God that she managed to somehow escape that attempted kidnapping.
Oh, bullshit. It was such bullshit.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, just everything surrounding hers. Did you hear what her husband did during the vid lockdown?
No, with the whole going out in the boat.
Yeah. I know those people. And they're like, no, you're getting in the back of the line.
Oh, so you actually, the people who own the boating place?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, so it's just all kinds of just nothing about that sits right. And again, it was just.
Wait, were you at the Capitol when you guys went to the Capitol in May? Were you one of the people there?
No, I didn't do that. I was busy working actually, but my name was floating around to the point where the Lansing, where the Ingham County Sheriff called me. And it's like, hey, we just want to talk to you and make sure your people are like cool and there's not going to be anything. I'm like, they're not my people. Your people. They're like, well, we see your name around. I'm like, okay. I know they're not my people.
Really?
Nothing to do with them. Yeah.
So wait, but what made them come to you? There has to be some reason they came to you.
Because I had sued the governor and I was in the news and there was like a bunch of Facebook chatter about everyone that was going. And somehow my name kept getting brought up to the point where the Ingham County Sheriff thought like I was leading this or had some sort of influence over them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't even know the group. I know nothing about them. Mm-hmm. That's what happened.
So you're going to be running for governor in the next 6 years, right?
God, no, I couldn't be a politician.
Why not?
I'd say the wrong thing.
So what? Yeah. Like, what, come on. So what? Look at Trump. Right. He says the wrong thing every 10 minutes.
I ran for office a number of years ago before I knew anything, before I was out of diapers. I ran for office and that was an experience. And then I work with some senators on various bill drafting stuff. And so if you've ever seen the way the sausage is made, you don't want to make it anymore. And so I worked with some stuff regarding family law disputes and custody and things like that a number of years ago with some legislation and just the horse trading and all of that. It kind of put a bad taste in my mouth in politics. So I don't have an inclination to do that.
I didn't ask you what type of law you practice.
So I call myself a litigator because I like to take anything that really takes you into the courtroom. I like the courtroom argument. But I practice a lot of family law, criminal defense, and like civil litigation, some civil rights stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't I'm not doing car accidents and I'm not doing medical malpractice or anything like that. But I have a probate attorney that does a lot of just drafting stuff in my office. And then whenever the family starts fighting and we go to court, and then that's when I jump in. I just like the courtroom. So I call myself a litigator, but yeah, family law, civil rights, and criminal defense.
So criminal defense ties us into Brian Kohberger, the Idaho 4 murderer, right?
Oh yeah.
So he's in the news today because he finally, a grand jury indicted him. Have you been following this?
Yeah. No, I've been following it, and we were playing some of that a little bit on my Discord earlier. But I didn't hear all of it.
Now, and this is a very confusing thing. Now, I'm not a criminal defense attorney. Okay, so because I do this, I've sort of become like I would call myself paralegal level on understanding criminal defense at this point, because I definitely understand more than most lay people on it, but I've never actually practiced criminal defense law. But it's like sort of thrust in my face, like, 3 or 4 times a week at least. So from what I understand, the way it works with respect to indictments in Idaho, and I don't know if it's like this in Michigan, maybe you can walk us through it. Because I was very confused. I was like, "What do you mean a grant? He was charged ages ago." So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want my audience to understand this. I'm basically teaching them as I'm sort of like 90% sure that this is accurate. So initially, a prosecutor charged him. When a prosecutor, and you might be asking yourself the same question I asked myself: what the hell are you talking about? He just got indicted. He was indicted like 4 months ago. And
I had.
And as I understand it, the way it works in Idaho is there's 2 ways you can have an indictment. You can have an indictment that comes from a prosecutor, and the prosecutor says, these are the charges we're spelling out, and you don't take it to a grand jury. And then there's a preliminary hearing before a judge. And at the preliminary hearing, after it's concluded, the judge decides there's probable cause here, which now means you're going to go to trial, or there's no probable cause and the defendant is dismissed. And they had set up to have a preliminary hearing, I think, at the end of, it was supposed to come up like next week. And instead of doing that, they said, you know what, let's just take it to a grand jury and get them to indict him. And now we no longer need to have a judge sit through a preliminary hearing. And that's why he was indicted on the same charges, but now that it's via a grand jury, there's no longer a need for a preliminary hearing. Is that an accurate way of breaking it down as you understand it?
Yes, actually. And we typically don't use grand juries in Michigan. We do have the authority to under our Constitution.
You don't use what? I'm sorry, you say you don't use what?
Grand juries in Michigan.
Really?
No, we indict via a complaint issued by the prosecutor, and then we have a preliminary examination, like you said, to determine whether or not there's probable cause to bind over on the felony. And it's usually one-sided and kind of rubber stamped, but every once in a while you can make like an effective argument. Usually when it comes down to a technical issue like jurisdiction or whatever, various things. But we do have the ability to do a grand jury. I think there's one like every 10 years.
Really?
So yeah, it's interesting though that they would. What are they scared of? Is my thought. Because with a preliminary examination, the state presents a witness or several witnesses, but then the defense also gets to present witnesses. It's like a little mini trial. And so it's an adversarial proceeding, whereas grand jury is not. It's all one-sided. So what are they concerned with that the defense could bring up? Why? That's my question.
Right.
Why are we avoiding the adversarial proceeding? Because I feel like unless that's part of Idaho's regular practice, like, oh yeah, we do this all the time, it's no big deal. I feel like there's something that they might have a problem with. Maybe they don't have enough evidence that could stand up to cross-examination at this point. Not saying, he's innocent right now. He's innocent until the state proves him guilty. And I know they, talked about some DNA and stuff like that, but maybe they're not actually able to present that just yet. And so maybe they felt like going.
You mean it hasn't been properly tested yet?
Maybe it has. They don't have the proper findings yet, or whatever. It hasn't been properly tested. They, done a preliminary test, and they can confirm enough that they were comfortable arresting him and charging him, but maybe not enough that it could stand up to the scrutiny and with cross-examination. I just feel like they're trying to avoid the adversarial proceeding. They're trying to avoid cross-examination.
Well, it's possible. I would give you a different reason that they would do it, which is, I would imagine you've done preliminary hearings. I haven't, obviously, but I would imagine that at a preliminary hearing, it's probably, as you said, it's kind of like a mini trial, and you might not want to tip your hand as far as strategically, which witnesses may be stronger than others, which witnesses might be you might not want to have them locked in, like their testimony. For example, the girl who was hiding there and was an eyewitness, that I'm sure they plan on calling at trial. So, you might not want to have her locked in on the record at a hearing with her statements locked in, and then risk that she's going to, in some perhaps minor ways, conflict herself at a trial a year from now, and then that will undercut the strength of her testimony. So, but if you do it by a grand jury, I imagine that there's little knowledge as to at least how you might be able to read the transcript, but there's little knowledge as to how she appeared and how strongly she presented versus how weakly she presented. There could be a lot of reason. There could be a strategic benefits to doing it behind closed doors without giving the defense the opportunity to view your case.
No, that makes sense. My policy is, if I'm ever representing you in a criminal matter, felony rather, we never waive the preliminary examination. We don't have open discovery where I can depose a police officer in a criminal case or anything like that. There's no depositions in criminal matters in Michigan. The only time I get to see how some of these witnesses are going to respond on the stand or testify, or even me having an opportunity to cross-examine them, is during the preliminary examination. So I never waive them. Even if I know they're absolutely going to get bound over, there's so much information you could learn. And so your argument does have some merit as to why they might have foregone that. Although you can get the transcripts, you don't get that sort of dynamic. You can't see how they responded on the, on the stand, and how they respond when they're cross-examined and pressed certain ways. So yeah, there could be some advantage to that.
Yeah. By the way, if you're thinking Texas, look at Rockport instead of Galveston. Is better fishing there. So
okay. I got my mindset on Galveston because I read Isaac Storm when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
Do you know that book?
Nope.
It's about the 1900 hurricane. Isaac was like a National Weather Service guy. Mm-hmm. And so I always had my heart set on Galveston.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there was there was so many different topics I wanted to cover with you here, and I've been trying to fly through them because I've been nervous about running out of time, and I felt like I sort of
now we're done.
Want to jump past them. So now we're finished. I hope you all enjoy this show. Thank you so much. I'm kidding.
No, okay. Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Was it Kohberger?
Kohberger.
Yeah. Have you actually looked at any of the affidavits? Have you followed it at all?
Yeah. Not in the last 4 months. When he first was charged, I went through the affidavits and brought them down.
Okay. So what are your initial thoughts?
Talking
about the facts that, as they're being presented.
I thought I was hoping for more.
I kind of was too. And I
there's
don't like the girl's affidavit for the state's perspective. Okay. I think it's weird. I think there's something missing there.
How so?
The fact that it was dark, but she could see eyebrows. The fact that she didn't say anything, even though she felt scared.
Yeah. The fact that she waited 9 hours before calling the police.
And texted friends and called friends. And she texted or called friends ahead of time before she called the police. And there was just a lot of weird stuff. Didn't she call friends or something?
I don't remember that part of it. But I will tell you, look, people are going to tell you, this is what people will tell you, that when people who react to shock very differently. And that's true. We hear this frequently when it comes to Me Too claims, right? That people are like, you can't really judge the memory because, when you have a traumatic event that happens to someone, it does funky things to the memory. And I think that everyone who says this really means it. And I think there's truth to it. I think there's definitely truth to it. But I also... And while I think there's truth to that, I think it's become a catch-all, which is always. It can't. I don't believe that every single time that we've heard the claim, it's been purely that trauma has affected it, rather than it being some sort of manipulation. Now, but at the same time, I can't tell you that in this circumstance, this is the time where someone is full of it, as opposed to when they're telling the truth. So I sort of feel as if it gets used by people that whole framework that, there's trauma, so the memory is affected, gets used in places where truth would dictate it should not properly be used. But there's no way for us to know which time that's actually the case. So it feels it's a very frustrating answer.
No, I would agree, and I'm not saying like judging her response and saying that that's what her actual response is and or was and she recorded it accurately and her. I just feel like there's something missing. I feel like there's some sort of the story that's missing, whether she's intentionally or whether I doubt she typed out the affidavit herself. Whether there's something lost in translation. It's just read odd, and it doesn't mean that this guy didn't do it. It kind of read odd to me. And we had a trial. Actually, I covered sort of briefly. It was like a 4-day trial out of New Hampshire. This Brandon something he was alleged to have killed his minister.
Okay,
shot his minister. Well, he was found. Like I said when we were watching that case, everybody acted weird. So the minister's over at the defendant's house painting. He has a conversation with somebody around 8:30. It ends in the morning. And then by 2:00, they're doing a welfare check. That's odd that they're doing a welfare check after only a few hours when the guy's working, right?
Yeah.
And then the defendant's sister and grandmother show up to do the welfare check on this pastor or minister. And the sister goes up and then runs out of the house screaming. And instead of like, hey, what's going on? Do we need to call anything? Grandma runs in. And I feel like that's odd. And she finds the defendant on his hands and knees praying and talking in tongues. They're Pentecostal. So if you know anything about that religion.
No, I don't know. I seriously don't know Pentecostal.
They talk in tongues and things like that. And there's possessions involved, which is fine. But the fact that, presumably his argument is that he came across the minister shot by somebody else, but instead of calling 911, he's on his knees praying. And that's weird, I guess, and you got to kind of explain that to everyone's just acting weird.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to write it off as, well, that doesn't make sense to me, so I'm going to say that he's guilty. Right. You got to put it in context, but everyone was acting weird. In that particular case, and it's just kind of.
So what you're saying, I don't know what to take from this though. What should I take from this, David?
Well, you can't predict how people are going to respond in a situation. So you talk about this woman or this girl in the Idaho case.
I don't understand how she was in trauma from seeing the guy.
No, I don't either.
This is why I think you're struggling with. She doesn't know that her roommate's dead. She doesn't know there's been 4 murders in the house. So why is she in trauma? She might have been freaked out by some stranger in the house, but she might have wanted to hide in her room. You would think that when as far as she knows, there's an intruder in the house and everyone is still okay. So you would call 911. And if you're freaked out and terrified that there's an intruder in the house, let's assume that she has a very fragile psyche, where as soon as she sees an intruder in the house, that freaks her out. I mean, the level of trauma that we're assuming happened to her just from seeing an intruder and not knowing that anyone in the house, no one else saw them, interacted with them, had anything, and nothing. And it's just very strange. It's very strange that also she had overheard someone say, like, she did say that she had overheard someone saying something like, I'm here to help you, or something like that, which, okay, like when you read those words on a page, that's very confusing what that means, because if it's being said by someone who sounds like, fire safety rescue person, hey, I'm here to help you. Like, that's very different than like, I'm here to help you. Like, right. It changes everything. And when his words on a page, like in a text, you have no idea what that actually sounded like to her.
Right. And I think maybe I was misunderstanding the point of her story, or not the point, but the point in time of her story about her acting weird. But you're right. Why would all of this traumatize her if she's not doing anything? But then again, people freeze up sometimes, and they're too afraid to call sometimes. This guy in this other case apparently decided the best thing to do was pray.
Right.
when he came across his dead minister and painting or in the house.
Right.
And so you never know how people are going to react, but it just doesn't sound right. You've got to explain this to me better. That's kind of what I was getting at. Something's missing.
Right. Look, I feel like if that trial gets streamed, I think everyone I know, and a dozen people I haven't yet met is going to be streaming the Kohberger trial. I'm sure I'm going to be streaming it, and I sort of feel like I sometimes I'll walk into a case feeling a certain way about it, and on this one, like I really don't know how to feel about it. Like I want these victims to get their justice. I just don't know that they got the right guy. Like, and I'm sure most of my audience here probably thinks he did it, and he probably did. I don't know, but what I'm saying is he has to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and
just because his DNA is there doesn't mean anything to me, because it's a party house. He's been there before.
Right.
Apparently, from what I understand, there could have been prior text communications between one of the girls in the house and this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming then that he had been over there, or at least around enough that his DNA would have gotten there. So DNA alone is not enough for me, because there's presumably other reasons that it was there. So I'm very curious. I would have loved to have seen the preliminary examination. I wish that would have happened.
Yeah. No, I think we all would have.
I would imagine that would have been streamed as well.
Oh my God! Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah. That would have been such gold.
Maybe that's why they did it too. Maybe they didn't want that streamed worldwide because you knew that was going to happen.
That's true.
That could probably easily be the reason why. Let's just get this done and over with.
Yeah, I didn't consider that. See, we talk it out long enough, and we come to like a new understanding between us as to what reality is. I finally remember the reason I threw out before. I was like, I ran through all the topics, and I was like, there's something big that I'm missing, and I don't remember what it was. And it was all the different issues going on with the Second Amendment that I wanted to talk with you about, because from one state to another, there have been so many changes that have been happening and so many laws that have been popping up, whether you're talking about in New Jersey, in Minnesota, there was in Illinois, there was another one, and they're going in different directions. Sometimes two-way seems to be winning, and sometimes it seems to be losing, or at least advocates of two-way seem to be winning versus losing. And so I sort of wanted to run through a few of them with you and get your thoughts on it. I assume that you're pretty strongly Second Amendment.
Absolutely. Shall not be infringed does have meaning.
What doesn't mean just shall not be infringed if you have a militia?
Yeah. Yes, it has a meaning beyond the militia. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Actually, there was a great case that came out of Texas. I think it's only Texas federal district. I don't think it's even gone up to the circuit court yet. But it talked about essentially preemptive. It's essentially attacking red flag laws. It's saying, like, before this guy does anything, you're already going to remove his rights. I got to pull up the case name so you can have it.
While you're pulling that case up, I'm going to run to a couple of super chats here. So Jesse said, did they check the witness for drug use? Maybe Stone people react to things very strangely. I'm not being mean, just a question that would explain her actions. That's a really interesting point that Just Me is raising here. It could be that she could have been on cocaine, for all we know, and she sort of wanted that to wear off before it actually happened. But they might not want to publicize that because that would clearly affect her memory and that might hurt her testimony. So it's sort of like, I mean, she's going to be asked, I assume, at trial if she had ingested. This was a party house, so if she had ingested any recreational drugs within 24 hours prior. But yeah, I think we have a lot of bombshells left to come on that case. That's my prediction. I think there's a bunch of bombshells of things like, oh man, I didn't see that. That's what I'm thinking is going to explain a lot of these things that are just confusing to us. But who knows? Maybe it'll be like Marilyn Monroe's death. Who knows? Tara Reynos says, when he was arrested, he asked if anyone else had been arrested. Nobody has mentioned this since. If he did it, I don't see how he did it alone. Interesting question, Tara. Has anybody else been arrested? That does sound
Not that I'm
like
aware of.
that's a strange question. I want to welcome a new member to the following. Marina, welcome aboard, Marina. God bless you. Welcome to the following. Our members are called followers because this is the following program. Not that this is a cult. It's not a cult. There's no mutilating squirrels. There's no drinking blood or Kool-Aid. There's no tracksuits or spaceships or anything of that kind. We're just all about community, unity, and greater personal growth. I am not the leader of the following. I am a follower, just like you. I am not David Koresh, but we welcome you to the following, and hope you enjoy your time here. Thank you for joining. All right, did you pull that case up for me, or you didn't pull it up? I can go through other stuff here. I've got three different.
You don't need to talk about it now. I'll just get it to you for later. Next week.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I'm not putting you on the spot there or anything. Okay, so the first one I'm going to bring up here, because I have a bunch here. So the first one I'm going to bring up is Minnesota's red flag law. You saw this, right? You were the one who told me about this, I think.
No, this is Michigan's.
Oh, well,
Michigan.
I'm bringing up Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see what Minnesota has to say, because
this is 15 hours old. So proposes sweeping gun control laws, including a red flag law. Okay. So this is, I think we're going to start seeing the difference between like North and South as to how these gun laws start going in the wake of the Bruin decision. But
yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think what they're also trying to do is they're trying to test the boundaries of the Bruin decision, as well as, McDonald in the city of Chicago and the DC case, Heller. And I think they're really just trying to, with these three cases, they're really just going to try to push as much as they can and see where they can get a line drawn.
Yeah, well, in Minnesota, Democratic Minnesota senators holding firm despite only a 1-vote majority successfully passed sweeping gun control legislation in an effort to keep guns out of the hands of Nick Rekieta or people in crisis. Sorry, to keep guns out of the hands of people in crisis and criminals. The Public Safety and Judiciary Finance and Policy Agreement passed early Tuesday, May 16th, by a vote of 69-63 after passing the Senate 34-33 on Friday. Oh, my God. Look at that. One senator. I
want his name.
The proposals include the controversial red flag law that would allow authorities to ask courts for, quote, extreme risk protection orders to temporarily take guns away from people deemed to be an imminent threat to others or themselves.
They had a conference. They had to have had a conference, because that's very similar language that they used in Michigan. They got together. They shared. I'm curious to see what.
Yeah, I hate to break this to you, but anyone who's living on the East Coast or West Coast can never keep Minnesota or Michigan straight from each other. So, I mean, that's just reality. We struggle. Maybe that's a New York thing, or maybe that's a Boomer thing. I don't know. But yeah, I know Minnesota is the one where that's where you got your Vikings, and that's where it's shaped sort of like a little K, and a circled out K. And Michigan looks like it just fits right in there. But
we have the Great Lakes. We look like a mitten. How do you not know us?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. You do look like a mitten, and you got that little piece on top there that should be part of Canada, but isn't. But yeah, with respect to your politics and stuff like that, I assume that you guys are exactly the same. I assume that there's no difference at all. Oh yeah, exactly the same. Quote, what we're going to be providing finally is a path forward for families and law enforcement who know that someone's exhibiting signs of crisis and danger, said Democratic Senator Rob Letts of St. Louis Park, chairman of the Senate Public Safety Committee, and it will give them lawful tools to separate people in crisis from the firearms that are around them. The provision is part of a broad public safety budget bill that also contains expanded background checks for gun transfers, with opponents arguing it violates persons' due process, and the Second Amendment of the Constitution.
This is identical to the stuff they passed in Michigan.
So why don't you tell me about the Michigan red flag law? When did that pass, the Michigan one?
Thursday. It wasn't. It wasn't. It was like a couple weeks ago. No, you can keep going. I'm just spotting all the similarities.
Yeah. So tell me about the Michigan red flag law.
The Michigan red flag law. The idea behind it is that if somebody has is a risk to themselves or others, then they could get a what the hell is it called? An extreme something or other, some sort of protection order. They call it a particular thing. And with this protection order, within 24 hours, the clerk of the court, like that day or very soon thereafter, is supposed to send this order to the local law enforcement, whether it be city or the county sheriff or whatever. And then within 24 hours, the county sheriff is supposed to come to the house and take all firearms. So they literally storm in and take all your firearms. And that order is good for 1 year. So you don't get any firearms for 1 year. They take them all from you. There's also provisions about going after, if you have your guns somewhere else that aren't necessarily at your home, they can go get those as well. I had a question. I'm like, well, what if my roommate's got a gun? Are they going to take my roommate's gun? But that's beside the point. You then get one chance to file a motion to set it aside. This is, mind you, after they've already taken your guns, because it mandates that the police do this within 24 hours. And then they have to sign a proof of, service and send it back to the court that says, yes, within 24 hours, we took all of his guns. You can file a motion to have it dismissed. You get one chance at it. There's no provisions for like change in circumstances or anything like that. You get one chance at it, where the burden is on you to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that you are in fact not a danger to yourself or others. So the burden is shifted. So like with a personal protection order or something like that, if someone gets a personal protection order against you or a mental health hold against you and you challenge it, the petitioner still has the burden, not here. The burden shifts to you to prove your innocence. Now, if that's not bad enough, there's a bunch of factors that the court may consider. All right. Any of these factors, all of them, or one at a minimum has to be considered. Any evidence that the person has engaged in assaultive conduct in the past. Any evidence.
Assaultive, meaning even verbally assaultive?
Well, it's not clear. It says assaultive or battery, and it doesn't even have to have a conviction or even a charge. Any evidence is the word.
So, have you ever gotten in a fight? Have you ever gotten in a fist fight?
Yep, ever gotten into a fist fight. That could be considered. Any evidence of mental health illness. Okay, what does that look like? Do you have to have a doctor? I mean, for a mental health hold, you got to have a doctor sign off on it. But any evidence of is sufficient. Any evidence of controlled drug use. Like,
I just want to pause for a second.
Yeah.
And just clarify before we get into this. In order to trigger this whole thing, what yardstick does someone have to reach in order to establish that your guns should be taken from you?
So a family member, including an ex-spouse. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
Yep.
If an ex-spouse,
an ex-spouse is included specifically as a family member, files a petition in the circuit court. By the way, it gets all expedited and proves by the preponderance of the evidence that you have met one of these factors, like we got into a fight or something. You have to convince the court by preponderance that you're in fact a danger to yourself and others. But when the court's reviewing it, they have to consider these factors. But get this, one of the factors is an attempt or an actual acquisition of a firearm within 180 days. So, and they don't have to consider anything else. That's just one factor that could possibly lead to this. So, in effect, as the statute
this can't be constitutional.
Well, it's not. It's not. We're not even talking about the constitutionality of it. It's not constitutional for a whole host of reasons. There's already a lawsuit filed, and hopefully it'll be quickly dealt with. But you know how the court systems go. The mere act of attempting to acquire a firearm could get the rest of your firearms banned or taken away.
Wow.
Yeah, it's horrible. And this is just the red flag law. This isn't the safe storage law. This isn't the transferring of the gun law. This is the red flag law.
So if a spouse says ex-spouse says you're dangerous because within a month after the divorce you got a you bought a gun.
Yeah, he was angry and yelling at me on the phone. Here's the recording of it, Judge. And he's
Yeah.
got a bunch of guns, and now I'm scared. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll get the guns taken
yeah.
away. And then the next thing she's going to do is file that motion for custody because he's now a danger. Look, the court said he's a danger. He can't even have guns. How could he have my kids?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Wow. And let's face it, the president of the United States says that, if you identify as MAGA, then you're a menace to America.
That's right.
So that's certainly something that could be considered a danger. I mean, that's why when he was using when he gave that red speech, which I'm referring to the speech where he was talking about that backdrop was red, where he had the military behind him in shadows. Right, which was just like the most. It's like we're going to try and intimidate people as much as possible, and it's like
dictator look, right?
Yeah, the whole despot look that he was trying to capture there. It's like in the background music was like dun 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 dun. dun. Crazy MAGA extremists. It was insanity. It was insanity. I mean, he literally looked like that guy was a Stratford from V for Vendetta. Screaming in the mic, those with the red backdrop behind him. It was crazy. And he's talking about, I'm not talking about all Republicans. I'm talking about those who are MAGA, the ultra MAGA. It's like, oh my God. To me, MAGA doesn't mean Trump. I think Trump is a tiny, tiny portion of MAGA. I haven't said this in a while. I've said it to my audience many times, but I think I've said it in the last 4 to 6 months. To me, MAGA and the reason that MAGA was so popular was not simply that he could be a charismatic personality, but I felt that it was capturing family values that people recognize have far too long been lost from this country, and that were the foundation of what this country were about. The civil liberties, the idea of the nuclear family being a very important part of a young person's ability to grow into becoming a healthy, productive adult, a responsible adult, someone who's going to be a contributor to society rather than a menace to society. And actually find their own happiness in life, really grow to be a genuinely happy person, which, let's face it, if I asked you right now, what percentage of the population, if they were asked in a poll, if you took a poll, what percentage would check off on the box on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being completely happy and 1 being miserable, how happy would you rate yourself as being a person? Like how satisfied are you? How happy are you with your life? And what percentage of the population do you think would actually check off 5?
I don't imagine too many.
And isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? We're living in a country where we have far greater luxuries than the kings of the world had as recently 100 years ago, where everyone has cell phones and everyone has some sort of access to some sort of health care. They have free education. They have TV that's able to basically entertain them. They have access to the internet. Very few people don't have a very small percentage of the population doesn't have access or has limited access to some sort of shelter, and they have food. I mean, think about how many people died of starvation throughout the centuries, and the concept of that happening here in America is just mind-boggling that such a thing could ever happen here in this country. And this is the life that we've grown accustomed to as far as being who we are, and yet we have greater misery than ever before. I mean, greater levels of misery when we're living in it used to be. And life, look, I'm not trying to say life is easy. Life is very hard. It's a challenge. It's a daily challenge to go through the grind. And everyone has their own personal challenges and demons they have to deal with. But the level of misery that exists today seems to far exceed any levels of misery that we see in recorded history, and it's pathetic. It's sad. That we're living in such a rich society and people are so miserable. So to me, the idea of behind MAGA is we need to find the roots that led to America growing into what it was. That doesn't mean racism. Of course not. Racists are gross and disgusting, and they should be shunned by society if they're legitimately racist, if they legitimately think they're superior or based on their race, gender, or ethnicity. but it means actually caring about your fellow man. It means actually looking to become to help society out, and it means actually being accountable. Someone whose shoulders are strong enough to actually face up to the challenges of the world, and breeding that as a healthy way of living our lives. And to me, that's what MAGA is ultimately about. Not about Donald Trump. And I think that's why we saw people waving American flags all across the world when he was president, because the ideas of standing up for freedom and liberties and all these different brilliant concepts that our founders imbued and wove into the fabric of this nation, that's something that is what America always stood for, and somehow doesn't feel like it stands for it at all anymore. That's what I think MAGA is. And to be proud of the flag rather than to be embarrassed by it and think, oh, it's a sign of racism. To actually recognize the positives of our past rather than focusing on the negative elements, much of which was really just a byproduct of the era from which our founders were raised in, rather than any individual evil attitudes that they deigned on their own. So that, to me, that's what MAGA is. That's what people are embracing when they embrace MAGA. That's why I tend to embrace it. And every time I actually see Trump give a speech where he makes MAGA about himself instead of about American values, it turns my stomach. It makes me feel like I don't want my ideas to be associated with that. I want it to be about what America is about, not about any individual. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about who we, the American people, are. That's what MAGA should be about. That's what I believe it's about. That's how, when I'm talking about MAGA, that's what I'm talking about. And to me, it's something that everyone should be proud of. And someone who's ultra MAGA, to me, that is that much greater. It's not something that's a mark of racism or anything negative at all. It's a mark of ultimate positivity. Someone who's looking to lead a happier lifestyle, who actually believes in truth, justice, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, genuine happiness, and the struggle for happiness, which is part of finding that happiness. Sorry, I got
well said.
Yeah.
A little bit. Well, I was going to say, you brought up Trump. Unfortunately, I don't think you can separate Trump from MAGA. And that's my concern. And I agree with you, though, that it's not about Trump. It's not at all about Trump. It's all about what you said. But I'm sure he himself personally didn't coin the term. It is synonymous with his campaign. I like the idea. I think and it's a great slogan. Someone in the chat said it was a brilliant marketing tool, and it was. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can ever separate it, though, from Trump. If Trump had drifted off into the background.
Because Reagan actually said, "Make America Great Again."
Did he?
Yeah, I actually saw a clip. I saw a clip of him.
Did he really?
Saying they were going to make America great again. Yeah,
I love Reagan. I listened to a lot of his speeches on I follow a couple of Facebook channels that are dedicated to him, and they always throw up his random speeches. So I listen to him, and then I get all inspired again. Yeah. That's why I think Michigan's coming back, because I listen to Reagan.
Yeah. So basically, the Great White North is turning to the Great Blue North, and they're going to be taking away your guns soon, and you somehow are sitting there holding out hope. I feel I look at you and I weep for you. I weep for you.
I'm glad I have your sympathy. I'm optimistic, but here's the thing: the founders, Thomas Jefferson, by the way, is behind me. Mm-hmm. They had optimism. They knew that if they all got together and worked hard, that they could create something greater and better than what was before. So I'm of the same spirit. We can get there. It might not be pretty, but we can get there.
So you're not supporting national divorce?
National divorce,
like a split of the country?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you would be in favor of that?
Oh yeah, 50 separate nations.
But that would be amazing. That would be amazing. But I'm talking about like an actual, a peaceful divorce where it's like, okay, you states, you go there, you can all be subsumed into Canada, basically.
I'm a huge proponent of sort of how do you want to say it? Self-determination for the individual as well as government entities. And if the various states decide that they want to do that, they should be able to peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, self-determination, absolutely. And I believe it's part of the UN Charter as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a nationwide idea or worldwide idea that we're supposed to subscribe to. So why would we not carry it to its natural conclusion, which would be if the states want to break off or the nation wants to divorce, we're all for it.
Yeah, well, I'd be very happy to see this country split. I really would.
It's too big. It really is too big. There's too many people. It's too much landmass.
And too strong a federal government, which is basically decided that everything falls under their umbrella, when really the Constitution says almost nothing should fall under their umbrella.
What I loved about Trump getting elected the first time is that I thought they would focus entirely on him and grind to a halt and just leave us alone. And they did focus on him. Unfortunately, they didn't leave us alone in the process. But that's really what I wanted. I wanted it just to implode. You guys go do your thing and bicker and let us be and don't bother us.
Yeah.
That's what I was really hoping would happen.
Oh. I wanted to cover a few more gun decisions before we get out of here.
Yeah.
So there's actually two more that I wanted to cover. So
I sent you the one in the private chat, by the way, if you want to take a look at it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
it's an article. It's not the actual anything. It's not the actual case.
Right. Okay. I'll pull that up in a second. But yeah. So the first one I wanted to cover was another bad one, which was in Illinois, and that was this one here. Supreme Court lets Illinois keep ban on sale of some semi-automatic guns for now. So I don't know if you saw this, but this came out this morning, where the Supreme Court had an opportunity. I'm not going to go through this whole article here, but the Supreme Court said Wednesday that Illinois can, for now, keep in place a new law that bars the sale of certain semi-automatic guns and large capacity magazines. The High Court denied an emergency request from people challenging the law, which bans so-called assault weapons. The law's opponents had asked the court to put the law on hold, which means that they were looking for some sort of injunctive relief.
You ever talk to your chat about, or your listeners about what it takes to actually get an injunction?
I was about to get to that in a second.
Okay, I was going to say.
I was about to get to that in a second. The law's opponents had asked the court to put the law on hold while court challenge continues. The court did not comment, and no justice publicly dissented. High Court's action comes at a time when gun violence has been heavily in the news, blah, 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 blah. Gun violence has nothing to do with guns, but they will pretend that it does. And the case for the Supreme Court involves an Illinois state law enacted in January. Legislation bans the sale of a series of guns, including the AR-15 and AK-47, which are the two guns that the left hates more than any others. They don't really know much about any guns at all. In fact, anytime there's a shooting, they use the phrase AR-15 style gun.
Okay, can I just say this? I saw a news story where this woman was testing. She was trying to demonstrate how lethal the AR-15 was, the bullets that it fires.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was shooting it into a gelatin thing, and she's like, all right, so this is the size of it, and look at this big balloon that comes through the jello mold that they use to simulate a human body. I forget what that stuff's called. And then she compared it to a 9mm handgun. And I said, okay, lady, why don't you take my hunting rifle? And that is going to knock the jello mold off, but you're not banning that,
Right.
It's just they set it up in a specific way to make you think, oh, that's dangerous.
Right.
It's not. It's a weak cartridge compared to what you go out and deer hunt with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but
they don't understand that.
They love saying an AR-15 style. My face happens to be a Brad Pitt style face. Yes. It's not exactly his face, but it's a Brad Pitt style face.
Style, yes.
Yeah. So when we you were talking about injunctive relief there.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so some people see that and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they banned this, or the court rejected their complaint and all this stuff. Injunctive relief is extremely hard to get. And so just because a court denies injunctive relief, first of all, it's not a decision on the merits. It's a preliminary matter. And what you have to show is that assuming the facts are true, that there's some relief that could never be recovered in the future.
irreparable harm.
Yeah, irreparable harm. In the classic example, there's a forest. If you don't get an injunction from somebody cutting down the trees, it's going to take 100 years or more for those trees to grow back.
Such a Minnesotan example,
right?
A Michigan
let's
example.
See here. If we knock down a skyscraper,
if we allow them to dump oil into the rivers, our rivers are going to be. Yeah, it's like, okay, thank you, Michigander. Yeah, okay.
So if you get an injunction to not knock down that skyscraper in New York, yeah, but that's the idea behind it, is that it's irreparable. There's no amount of money that could recover that forest. It's essentially irreplaceable, or that building.
There's 3 things you normally need to prove, and sometimes they break it down to 4, but there's 3 things you need to prove, as my friend here is pointing out. One of which is a likelihood of success on the merits, which means it's more likely than not we're going to win. Another one is that absent the grant of this relief, meaning if you deny our application, that will result in what's called irreparable harm. In order to qualify as irreparable harm, it has to be something that cannot be remedied by getting money. Anything that can be remedied by if I pay it off, that I can pay off the problem, that is not something that can be considered irreparable harm. So, for example, if I say that the court should allow me to, if I say that if the court doesn't grant this injunction, it means that my child is not going to be able to go on a trip to Illinois or to a trip to Europe. So, and that's an altering life experience. How would you compensate for the value of that kid going to Europe? So that's the sort of thing where it's like, okay, there's no real way to put a number on what that's worth, which means that the harm of the loss of preventing that thing from happening by denying this application is something that's never really going to be set right if someone cuts a check at the end of the day and tries to fix it. Or the example that a Michigander might use is that, like, if I'm trying to say that you don't own this land, it's my land, and you're saying it's your land, and I took you to court, and I know that you're a real estate developer, and you're planning on clearing 500 acres of trees. Well, it's paying me at a rate of $1,000 a tree is not going to fix the problem, because I don't want that. I want the trees, and once the trees cut down, that's not going to be fixed. So while the case is going on, while it's basically saying before the court reaches a final decision, what's going to happen with this situation in that interim period? Well, I want injunctive relief that will stop the other party from doing something. So if the balancing of equities, which is a third test here, the balancing of equities says that it really makes more sense and fairness to say stop doing it rather than to say let them do it. So in that sort of circumstance, we'll say that, and there's irreparable harm, that you can't just cut a check and fix it. You can't just, prop the tree back up there. So in that case, we're going to say that injunctive relief is available. But a situation like this, where think about the reason for that. Think about what you'd be putting in a claim like this. I imagine, I haven't looked at the motion, but I imagine the motion says, hey, if we're not able to buy a semi-automatic gun in the next 6 months while this case is pending, I'm going to be really, really harmed. Really? How are you irreparably harmed by that? Why do you must have that your life is going to be completely upended and no one can compensate you for that damage if you're prohibited from buying a brand new semi-auto gun during the next 6 months to a year or 2 years even? Why is it that's costing you anything? It's very hard to say that that's really irreparable harm, which is why I can understand the Supreme Court saying, we're not going to give you injunctive relief here, because even if we find in your favor down the road, it's not like your inability to buy a gun over this period of time is really hurting you. I've been babbling for a while, but I'll let you.
No. Yeah, but that's why I jumped on the irreparable harm factor, because there's just no irreparable harm here. Now, if the situation was we're going to come confiscate all of them within the state or whatever, then that might be a little different. But that's not what they're doing. They're saying you can't buy anything new. So there's just no irreparable harm. But it doesn't mean the first factor, the likelihood of success on the merits isn't also true. You can have a likelihood and even win, but it still would not rise to the level that an injunctive relief would be granted.
And in general, in New York, at least in New York State court, I can't speak to federal court, but I imagine it's probably true also. There's a general, with respect to the third element of balancing equities, the overarching rule is that maintaining the status quo is always considered balance of equities, meaning that if one party wants to change the situation and the other party is like, look, give me the injunction just so that nothing changes from today going forward, that's considered satisfying the balancing of equities. So if the law stays in effect and people are not able to buy brand new guns, and you're saying, well, you should enable us to buy brand new guns. You don't have that whole maintaining the status quo. You want to be able to do something new over the next 6 months to a year, 2 years while this case is pending. And accordingly, it's not something you might be losing on balancing of equities. And the point that David was just making is the court might think that they have a great case, that they have a very high likelihood of winning. But since there's no irreparable harm, they're not going to get the injunctive relief. So while the left will look at this as a huge win and a sign that, oh, you see, this case is DOA, the reality, if you're an attorney, is that you recognize that just because you lose on an injunctive relief doesn't give much indication, if any, that your case is not ultimately going to prevail.
Yeah, I had the same issue with some of my. Anytime you sue the government, you get that same issue, and you just have to have that irreparable harm that most people don't have. And yeah, but it looks scary. It looks bad if you're pro-gun. You're like, oh my God, we're losing, when you're really not. It's just a preliminary matter. It's just the first step.
All right, so I got two more that we're going to bring up here, and then we'll get to super chats and we'll wrap up over here. So the first one is one you just gave me, which I haven't looked at yet. The Federal Appeals Court strikes down domestic violence gun law. What was this one about?
So this was an interesting case, and the reason why I brought it up is because we have something similar. Well, it's what I think is this case might go the distance and then would be very useful against the red flag laws, which is essentially before you're even convicted of something, they can take your right to have a gun. It's a sort of a preemptive removing of your right to purchase a firearm. And this actually was appealed, and it was successful appeal. And I have a feeling it's going to make its way even further. But I think this is sort of setting the groundwork to get rid of these red flag laws. A lot of what I read the case, and I just pulled up this article, and I didn't really read the article, but the case itself talked a lot about essentially preemptively taking away someone's right to purchase a firearm doesn't really meet the sort of the historical factors and standards that have been set forth under the new Supreme Court decisions, or newer. And so
the Bruin decision?
Yeah, the Bruin decision and things like that. And so that's what they largely decided this on, as well as the sort of the preemptive. And it says, I understand, if you were convicted of something, then fine. But this guy was convicted of domestic assault, and they found a rifle and a pistol at the home, who was the subject of a civil protective order that banned him from harassing, stalking, and threatening his ex-girlfriend. The order also banned him from having guns. The federal grand jury indicted the man, who pled guilty. He later challenged the indictment, arguing that the law that prevented him from owning a gun was unconstitutional. First, the Federal Appeals Court ruled against him, saying that it was more important for society to keep guns out of the hands of people accused of domestic violence than it is to protect a person's individual rights to own a gun. But it was later, but then last year, the U.S. Supreme Court issued the Bruin case, so now they're revisiting this.
That's really interesting, because the Bruin case really was not about this issue.
No, but they use it in a brilliant way, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I wanted to see it go the distance because I think this case here will stop a lot of the red flag laws.
Oh, I see how they use it. They're saying that case that new standards for interpreting the Second Amendment by saying the government had to justify gun control laws by showing that they're consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation, which obviously red flag laws have no history at all in this country. So,
Exactly.
so it's hard to understand how it is that they could hold up. Oh, this is phenomenal. What's the name of this case?
I can't remember. That's why I Googled it and I saw this article and I just sent it to you. It's a really good case though, if you get your hands on it and read the decision. But yeah, it's really good, and I'm hoping it goes the distance because it's going to do a lot to combat these red flag laws.
Specifically, the court ruled that the federal law was an outlier that our ancestors would never have accepted, borrowing a quote from the Bruin decision. This is a real originalist thinking.
Yeah,
this is where you see
beautiful. I get tingly when I read this stuff.
This is where you see a distinction between a textualist and an originalist, because a textualist, which is that's one of the trickiest lines to find as far as like, well, where would a textualist say? I mean, shall not be infringed. I mean, when you're focusing on like what would our ancestors have accepted, that's like, okay, that's real originalist type of thinking, as opposed to like, well, if we look at the text, what do the words tell us? So,
damn it, I should be able to own a cannon.
Yes, well, you should be. You should be. I mean, think about how are you different from Lockheed Martin? Seriously, why are they any different from you? They're able to develop nuclear weapons. Why can't you have a nuclear arsenal? What makes them special? Is there some sort of greatness about Lockheed Martin or any of these defense contractors that enables them to have access to all these weapons? Why can't you? It's ridiculous.
Yes, I agree. There's nothing historically that would prevent you from doing. In fact, if you're a fan of history, you know that early on in the Revolutionary War, they were running down to Joe's house to grab the cannon and going over here to get the rifles. That's what you were doing. And that in today's world, we're talking about fighter jets and nuclear weapons, but it's the same theory applies.
Yeah.
But right now, we're talking about simply handguns and AR-15s.
And I'll bring hope to my fellow New Jerseyans that a federal judge blocks more of New Jersey's new gun law. Ooh, what is this? This order suspends requirement that gun owners get liability insurance, lifts a ban on guns at zoos, and more. New Jersey's new gun law took another hit Tuesday when a federal judge expanded her January order, blocking much of its provisions from taking effect. U.S. District Judge Renee Marie Bum issued preliminary injunctions that lift the state's ban on firearms at zoos, film sets, public gatherings, medical offices, and airports, pick-off, drop-off areas. Which, because this is the area that Bruin really was talking about. The Bruin was basically saying you can't just call every area as far as and lock off all of Manhattan and say you can't carry a gun in the entire city. That's a violation, and it's basically say that there's nowhere that you can carry a gun without having special permits or whatever. So, New York responded basically by saying, okay, so you can't take it on a subway because that's dangerous. You can't take it on a bus because that's, you basically can't take it anywhere that more than like 4 people. You can't take it like in elevators practically. It's a joke.
I want to say this. I want to emphasize this on your channel because you got a bigger audience than mine. Understand that people who are getting concealed carry permits, if you, at least in Michigan, if you commit a crime, I don't care what it is, misdemeanor, reckless driving technically is a criminal offense. All right, you're doing it, but now you're in the possession of a firearm. Or let's go to the obvious DUI, right? You're going to commit a DUI and you're in a possession of a firearm. At least in Michigan, you're now elevated to a felony because you're committing a crime with a firearm. People who are trained and get their license to carry conceal and all this stuff and take it seriously don't put themselves in that jeopardy because they don't want to get the felonies. So they're not going to be reckless. They're not going to be out there committing other crimes.
It's a great point.
So sorry, I had to put that out there. You got a bigger audience than mine. I was going on about it the other day.
No, that's a great point. I've never heard everyone make that point before. So I'm glad you brought that out because I hadn't considered that if you have a gun, you don't want to risk losing it by becoming a felon.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be extra careful, in my opinion.
Right. So just finishing up this article here, that U.S. District Judge, the new order also prohibits the state from requiring gun owners to get liability insurance, a provision that was set to take effect July 1st. BUM also blocked a provision that would have required in-person interviews of character references for gun applicants.
That one's weird, but the liability insurance is also weird. I mean, it's not beyond a state to order somebody to carry insurance. I'm surprised that one got kicked.
Why do I? It's a taking. You're taking from me. Why?
Oh, well, we have mandatory no-fault insurance for our vehicles.
Because okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think statistically, like 7 out of 8 people are likely to get into an accident, a car accident at some time in their life of some nature or variety. What percentage of gun owners do you think are likely to have an some sort of incident that they're going to actually have to be financially liable, that they would require insurance?
Well, I'm not saying they're going to, or that they should be required to get insurance. What I'm saying is that under the, and again, this is New Jersey, it's not Michigan, but under Michigan, sort of the law, as I understand it to be, the state has the ability to force people to get certain insurances. And I was just surprised that that one was actually kicked. I don't agree that they should be required to. I'm glad that that was kicked. But I was just, it was just interesting that didn't survive.
Check this. Check out the language here. New Jersey legislators responded to Bruin by passing a law in December with new restrictions that gun supporters warned courts would ultimately strike down. In Tuesday's opinion, BUM moved closer to doing just that. Listen to this quote. Clearly, the state disagrees with Bruin, but it cannot disobey the Supreme Court by declaring most of New Jersey off limits for law-abiding citizens who have a constitutional right to armed self-defense. Wow. God bless this woman.
Mm-hmm. We need we need more judges like that. And this is all happening, by the way, at the same time the ATF is going out and tracking down like 30,000 gun braces. Did you hear about that?
No, what are you talking about?
Handguns for people with disabilities. Usually, most of the time, a lot of veterans are talking about this. But if you have a disability, you can get this hand brace that helps you hold your gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the ATF just banned all of them.
Why?
I don't remember I don't know the reason, but they just made a rule policy, and that is now illegal somehow.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is all happening at the same time. From what I heard, I was on another stream just before I popped onto yours, and this happened like today or like yesterday. Like this is very recent.
That sounds like a de facto violation of 14th Amendment to disable people.
You would think, and also, maybe the whole, well, I can't stand agency law, and I blame FDR every day for it. But how is it that they were just able to make a whole category of things unlawful? But yeah, so I have to do some digging into it. I heard people talking about it, and I was questioning them about it on the on a stream I was on just before this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this apparently is happening at the same time all this other stuff is happening too.
Wow. All right. Let me cover a few super chats here that before we wrap up. Joe, would you be willing to have Salman Anderson on to discuss his brother's wrongful conviction case? David covered Zachariah's whole trial beautifully. Hashtag free Zachariah Anderson. Would I be willing to have him on? I would consider it. I mean,
I don't know if you know anything about the case.
I do know. I know a little bit about it. I was actually watching with Vices when he was covering it, and I actually joined his stream a couple of times. So I know enough about that case to know that it's disappointing that a jury found that there was enough evidence there to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's scary.
I'm not saying that he didn't kill them, right. But I will go on record as saying that it's a joke that we consider that guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
I will go one further. I don't care if he killed him.
Mm-hmm.
That evidence is not at all enough.
That was hot garbage. That was awful.
Absolutely.
That was awful. I mean, there was like one speck of blood That
Not even
one
blood.
speck, we don't know it was blood. One speck
Yeah.
was something in his car.
Something.
One speck of
And
rust in his
Steve
car.
Godney pointed out, he's like, listen, if he cleaned his car, it was on a flat surface. It wasn't like it was down in a crevice that's hard to clean out. It was a flat surface. If he had cleaned his car, that would have been gone. You know,
Yeah.
with the bleach wipes and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was, I mean, the fact that they allowed in testimony about the marijuana plants there from a girl who basically said she couldn't ID a marijuana plant when she saw it.
Question the daughter about the gun incident, who later apparently recanted her statement.
Here's the thing. This is the thing people miss out on. Okay, Judge Schrader. Everyone in the country who's happy with the Rittenhouse decision thinks that Judge Schrader is like the greatest judge in the world. Here's the thing. Okay, here's a newsflash for you. My personal opinion about Judge Schrader is not a good judge. Okay, there was a lot of evidence that came in on Rittenhouse that should never have been admitted. That was why he had to come up. That's why you heard what's his name, Mark Richards coming in there and having to come up with the phrase hocus pocus out of focus because the judge allowed in evidence which was asinine. The
slow-mo playing of the videos and all of that shouldn't have been allowed.
Everything about it, to try and make it seem as if like now you can tell that gives any indicia as to what's going through his mind. Pictures that no one could figure out what it is a picture of. I mean, there was just so many times that evidence came in from like a YouTube video that they're like, well, how do you know this? Well, I saw it on YouTube. What? This is not even like a first-hand witness, and you're basically bringing it was asinine how much evidence that Binger was allowed to bring in there, and the fact that there was a Fifth Amendment violation that went on there, and he basically spent 5 minutes chewing out Binger and doing nothing about it other than some sort of remedial type of instruction to the jury. Please, this was a sham. This was not a fine showing by a judge. There are a lot of judges who I've streamed their trials where I was like, you know what? That's a good judge. I'll tell you, Judge Penny Karate was a much better judge in my opinion. She was fair. She was even-handed to both sides. She made some calls you might like, some calls you might not like, but you could understand her thinking. A lawyer watching it was capable to understand why she's allowing evidence in or keeping it out, as opposed to let's just bring everything in, because the role of a trial judge, and I'm sure you'll agree with me about this, the entire purpose of a trial judge is to serve as a gatekeeper, to make sure that you're not going to allow the jury to see information which will wrongfully bring them to the wrong conclusion. So was he as bad as Judge Newsom in the Murdoch case? No. Judge Newsom, I'm sorry, that guy should be impeached.
Horrible.
That was the worst showing of being a judge I've ever seen, arguably in my life, as far as having a damaging result from this twisted interpretation.
If you're ever
of what the
in
law
front
should
of
be.
a judge, by the way, and your attorney or you're the attorney and you make a motion and the judge says, I'm unwilling to make a ruling on that at this time, run. Find another judge, do something to work around it. Don't get in front of that judge because you will not have a fair trial. That's my assessment of any judge. And the Murdoch judge did it a lot. I didn't see a lot of that on the Rittenhouse case. I got behind the judge and I liked him a lot when he went off on Binger. Yes, he didn't do anything at the end, but he went off on him, and I said, okay, I like that. And then when I saw the Anderson trial, I was like, ooh, love triangle. Let me watch this trial. And then I saw it was the same judge. I was like, oh, okay, this should be a fun trial.
And again, he's allowing everything in. He was allowing like everything in. I mean, it's like, all right, we'll try. It's like the whole purpose to a judge is to basically, because this is what you need to understand. You know how you always hear objection, hearsay, and you have to understand why is someone objecting to hearsay? Why is that? It's because it's not reliable. There's no way for us to properly vet it. When you plant a seed in the mind of a juror, you're basically making them feel a certain way about something where there's no reason for them to be able to trust that what they just heard is truthful. And the example I gave, because I actually did a video, a standalone video called Objection, about objection hearsay, where I was explaining why it's so bad. Imagine that a pivotal element to the fact to be determined in a trial is how much does this does this elephant weigh? Okay. And we basically say, we know what we're going to use. We're going to use a scale, which we know that this scale is right 30% of the time. And the rest of the 70% of the time, the scale is off by like up to 1,000 pounds. Now we're going to let the elephant get on the scale and stand there and basically say, now we know for sure the elephant weighs exactly X. Look, he's standing on the scale. That's what it says. Now, if you're a juror and you see this, and especially you have no reason to know that there's a problem with the scale, to you, this is it. It's done. We know exactly how much he weighs. There's the scale. Obviously, it's good. Well, what about the fact that that's a faulty scale? Oh, okay. So, yeah, but look, that's what the scale says. So you basically take bits of information that you should not be implanted in your brain, and it starts sculpting what your vision of what happened and what truth is in ways that have no tangent, no relationship to reality. And now you're sitting here trying to fight against that. That's the same thing with hearsay. You're basically bringing in a statement that there's no way for us to know it's reliable. There's no way to. So someone stands up and says, "Hey, that it's rain." Someone says it's raining outside, and the idea is so how do you know it was raining? Because he said it was raining. Well, maybe this guy's a lunatic and he has bad vision. But maybe he's someone who is always praying for rain, and he's maybe he's watching a TV show and he sees on the TV show there's rain, and he's like, and that's what made him say, "Oh wow, it's raining." You don't know, and he can't be cross-examined. But now
I was gonna say you can't ask him.
He's not there to be asked. And the jury's like, well, okay, it was raining. Why wasn't he wet? Obviously, he wasn't outside. He must have been inside. That's what I'm saying is they start drawing conclusions off of things that there's no reason to. It's as faulty as that stupid elephant scale. So the point here is that's why a judge is so vital to say, this is what I'm going to allow the jury to hear, and this is not poison that I will allow to enter into the jury's ears. Because if we allow poison, the more poison that they get, the worse it is. Now, if you poison them with respect to allowing prejudicial evidence in, something that can make them really hate the defendant the way we saw with Murdoch. Because let's face it, some of the stuff that this guy has done was admitted at trial. Some of the stuff he's done, it makes him he's a terrible human being. But the question here is, did he actually blow out the brains of his own kid and wife? Did he actually shoot a shotgun into his own son's skull? And now you basically take the jury and you spend 3 weeks having people come up there and testify, oh, he's a thief. He's a thief. Yeah, the guy's a thief. Does that mean that he actually would blow? But now I hate him. So you feel like, okay, he's a terrible person, so he obviously killed his son, which is ridiculous. And if you see forensic evidence, which implies he could not possibly have done it, you sort of figure, well, maybe he found some sort of way to get that magic trick done that I haven't considered. He's a terrible guy. I'm sure he's the one who did it.
Well, and that's why generally you also exclude prior bad acts, unless there's some really compelling reason to allow it, such as MO or something else. And
every prior bad act was admitted in. Even the whole suicide, even the whole attempted suicide thing. There's actually a case law that's in South Carolina which says that you can only allow in attempted suicide if it's clear and convincing evidence that it definitely was related to the charges that's been brought. It's a superior
consciousness
court
of
decision.
Guilt. They said, yeah, consciousness of guilt, right?
And there was no evidence that this attempted suicide had anything to do with the murder. It could have been with the fact that he didn't try this attempted suicide until he was busted on the financial crimes. So why would anyone think that it was consciousness of guilt for the murder rather than consciousness of guilt for the fact that he's about to be humiliated for being a thief? So. But did he allow it in? Yeah. Why? Because he's terrible. Because he's a terrible gatekeeper, and he wanted to let everything in there. And so too, Judge Schrader is allowing a girl.
And he has political aspirations, mind you. He went in and then did a Dateline interview afterwards. When is the last time you heard a judge do a Dateline interview talking about a case that he literally just sentenced the guy to?
It was so asinine. What I'm saying is, in Judge Schrader, in the Zachariah Anderson case, he was also he's like, oh, okay, let's let her come in here and testify about the fact that the defendant is growing marijuana plants all over, which has nothing to do with whether or not he murdered someone.
Well, they opened the door because they asked about the garbage bags or some stupid,
some sort of that. And it's like, so now she has to prove that she's been in the house by actually testifying what the house looks like. And part of that is he's a marijuana grower. Let me tell you the very first time I argued in front of a judge. Okay.
All right.
Which is spot on to this. I had been admitted to practice 3 days, and I was working per diem for some personal injury firm. Okay, trying to just sort of cut my teeth and figure things out. And I was tasked with doing a deposition. I got paid $75 for this deposition to do this deposition. Okay, which to me, this is back in the late 90s. I was like, all right, woohoo, lawyer money. So the deposition was taking hours because I was a rookie. I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and I was terrified that I was going to make a mistake and miss something important. So and there's no objection relevance in a deposition. I mean, I'm literally asking about every stupid minutia in the world. A deposition which, now would probably take me, I don't know, somewhere between like an hour, somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a quarter. I was 5.5 hours into this thing. I'm sure my adversary wanted to kill himself. And I was tasked by the guy who signed the case to me and wanted to test me. I was tasked with asking about subsequent repair. This was a trip and fall case on a carpet and he told me to ask about subsequent repair. And I, like someone who had just taken the bar, said to him, I can't ask about subsequent repair because New York policy. So what is subsequent repair? It's
subsequent repairs. Yeah, when you repair, like say there's a faulty sidewalk and it causes somebody to trip and fall, and then you repair it afterwards. You're not supposed to be able to use that against them to say, see, you're at fault because you repaired it afterwards.
Why'd you fix it? Obviously, there was a defect. Yeah. Obviously, there was a defect. Why'd you fix it? Yeah. So you're not supposed to. So they don't allow you to ask questions about subsequent repair because it's against public policy. What does that mean? Well, what the New York legislature properly recognized was if we allow you to ask questions about fixing the defect, and that's going to punish, and that's going to be used against the defendant is not going to want to fix the defect because he's going to be afraid, oh my God, if I fix this defect, I'm admitting that there's a problem here. So they'd rather leave the defect there. And by leaving the defect there, someone else might get hurt on that defect. So it's against public policy so because of that, we say, plaintiff, you're not allowed to ask about subsequent repair, because if you ask about subsequent repair, because we want to encourage defendants to actually fix their defects rather than leaving them out there. Well, when I said I can't ask about subsequent repair, so he said you can because there's an exception. The exception is that if they're denying ownership, which they are denying ownership, you're allowed to ask about subsequent repair for the purpose of showing that they own the place, because nobody repairs it unless they're the owner. Only an owner fixes a defective place. So because of that, an exception to the ban about asking questions about subsequent repair is that you can ask about subsequent repair for the purpose of establishing ownership. So here I am, 5.5 hours in this deposition, and there's a translator, so everything's taking four times as long as it would, well, at least twice as long. And I asked this question about subsequent repair. Now, there's an the attorney who's for the defense was sitting there. He was a veteran. He would look like he was in his late 60s, early 70s, and he's dozing off through this thing, furious with me. And when I asked about subsequent repair, he goes, "She's not answering that question. Move on, counselor." So I said, "She has to answer the question." So he's like, "No, you're not allowed to ask about subsequent repair. Move on, counselor." So I said, "I'm not moving on. I want to answer this question. Did you fix it at any point after the accident? Did you fix the premise? Did you fix that defect?" So he said, "She's not answering that question. If you want her to answer, go get a ruling from a judge." So I was like, "Okay, well, let's go to a judge." This was the one question that they said you have to ask. Yes. So we go into the judge, and this 3 days out of law school, we come into judges. Now, it's a fascinating thing. We come up to the clerk, and the clerk's like, "What's the issue?" So he's like, "Well, we're having a deposition. He wants to ask about subsequent repair." And the clerk looks at me. He goes, "You can't ask about subsequent repair." So I said, "Well, I can for purposes of establishing ownership." He's like, "You can't ask that." So I said, "Well, I want to see the judge." So he's like, okay. And so they let the judge know I'm there. 5 minutes later, judge calls us in. Judge sees the attorney for the other side. The judge is like some old guy, like Frank Milano. He was in his 70s, whatever. And as soon as he sees the other attorney, he's like, Bert. And Bert's like, Frank, how's it going? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like some 26-year-old Jewish snooky lawyer, and these two guys start talking about their family barbecues together. I'm like, I'm so done. We sit down in the chairs there. They're laughing about like the last time that they went bowling. I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They're like old friends, and I'm sitting here like, you know, like nervously like waiting to ask my question from the judge. So he's like, so what's all this about? So he's like, well, he wants to ask about subsequent repair. And the judge looks at me. He's like, you want to ask about subsequent repair? So I said, well, we're allowed to ask about subsequent repair for the purposes of establishing ownership, and I want to establish ownership. So he looks at me. He goes, counselor, this isn't law school. If you want to find out about ownership, there are 10,000 questions you can ask to establish ownership without asking about subsequent repair. So your question's out. Move on to the next question. Now, mind you, this whole thing was a stinking test from this guy to see if I had the cojones to go into a judge and ask him, because it's my first time doing work for him. They wanted to see, does this guy, is he going to wilt away from it? Because it's scary going into a judge and going to the chambers, and you know. So they wanted to see if I had the cojones do it, and they knew I would. They knew I was going to lose. They set me up to fail. They're like, "There's no way he's going to allow that." But they wanted to basically, you know, it was like the hazing for my own good, to like teach me to like, you know, get acclimated. So in that sense, I certainly appreciate the experience. The point that I'm getting at is this ties into the whole thing about establishing ownership, that there's some questions that, yes, technically it's an exception. If Judge Schrader saying, you know what, I'm going to allow you to ask about this criminal activity that he has a whole marijuana plantation going on in there, to establish that she knows what the place looks like. She could describe 1,000 things in there without using the phrase marijuana plants. She could even say there's a lot of plants there. He loves plants, without referring to marijuana. And that would let you know that, oh, okay, he's got a lot of plants. Maybe, you know, he's got some hibiscus there. I don't know what he's got going on there. No one knows what's going on there. But she doesn't have to expressly say that he's engaging in criminal activity, but she was allowed to. Why? Because Judge Schrader allows everything in. She could have described the black curtains or the purple curtains and what color bedspread, and that he always would leave his jeans on the dresser, and there's a dresser over here, and the walls are painted this color, and there's a door which is missing a handle, and the dresser which has the handles hanging off. There's 1,000 ways that you can show, you know, what the room looks like and everything like that. The only reason that he allowed it in there is because either A, he didn't care about allowing the prosecution to lean on the scales, or I don't know.
Or he just doesn't care. He allowed so much dirty stuff to happen in the Zachariah Anderson case. We have the DA coaching the witnesses. We have I don't even know where to start with the Zachariah Anderson. I've been working on a video of it for a month now, going through the closing arguments and all the lack of evidence that came out there. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing with Wisconsin is that whole Denny motion thing. Did you hear about the Denny motion?
No, tell me about that.
So the defense was going to point the finger essentially at this Michael Campbell and say, this is the guy who did it. It was a financial thing. He you know, the victim or whatever owed money to Campbell. Campbell's doing all kinds of fishy stuff going on. We want to point the finger at him. And apparently in Wisconsin, you have to first bring a Denny motion and get the court's permission to point the finger at somebody else.
What is a Denny motion? Like, what do you need to establish in order to have that right?
I read through it. I don't remember exactly what it is.
Right.
But you need to have some specific fact that ties the third party to the victim. You can't just say, you know, John Smith did this. Okay. You have to be able to establish some sort of evidence that John Smith, you know, had a motive or was somehow involved or had the opportunity to, or something like that.
Right. You can't just say Hunter Biden did it. You have to like sort of.
But why not? As a defense, why should you be barred from saying it was Hunter Biden? You know, they might not believe you, but you have the constitutional right to present your defense. And your constitutional defense is that someone else did it. You should be able to point the finger at them.
It's an interesting question. This is an interesting philosophical question.
To me, I've never heard of a Denny motion. I was watching it, and then I did some research on it. I'm like, we don't have that in Michigan. I don't know anywhere else that you have to present some sort of threshold evidence before you can point the finger at somebody. It's part of your defense. So
I mean, I think I hear your point because what you're essentially saying is, like, if the jury's going to buy that story, you presumably would have to present some sort of evidence to support it anyway. So where's the harm? It's like not like you say, like, well, Hunter Biden did it. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Hunter Biden did it. Like, there has to be.
Yeah, I don't see why there's some threshold barrier is required. And the Denny case that I read actually opened it up because Wisconsin had even.
By the way, I do think it's a good possibility Hunter Biden actually did do it. So.
Yeah. Well, more likely than Zach, I would say. But yeah, so that was an interesting thing, and the judge denied the Denny motion, so didn't allow them to present any sort of evidence that this Mike Campbell did it. Now, he was called as the state's witness and they cross-examined him. But the fact, like, okay, so he owed you money. You went to the bank twice that day. You ended up driving to a landfill in Illinois for some reason. You know.
Did he really? He drove to a landfill in Illinois?
Yeah. He drove to, he drove
Who
to
goes to a landfill?
In the next state down. Now,
why would anyone go to
Well, he's in construction.
Oh, okay.
He's in construction. And he does that. But they're like, but you normally go to this other landfill, but you went to the one in Illinois. I don't know. But they weren't allowed to get into a lot of that and really point the finger at him because Judge Schroeder denied the Denny motion.
I wonder how the jury thinks that with his bad back, he was able to like lug out a 200 pounds of dead weight without leaving a blood smear across like the entire the entire walkway there. Like
no drag marks. He just I don't know.
How does someone do that? Like that's like I don't get it.
I don't get it. I believe there's probably two people. But you know, the wallet and the cell phone in the freezer. Why?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, the victim's wallet and cell phone were found in the freezer. I suspect the cell phone in the freezer was maybe a way to kind of block the signal, but why the wallet? What does that have to do with, or the credit cards were in the freezer and the wallet was on the couch or something? It's like, why?
Maybe because they have the PIN thing in credit cards now.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But but the police never found it. The mother found it a week after they turned the apartment over to the mother and she was cleaning the apartment up. The victim's mother. She found it. It was just, there was so much bad stuff going on with that case.
Wow.
It was nonsensical.
So what do you think? Should I have Solomon Anderson on?
I think I mean, you watched part of the case. I think it's a travesty. Right now, they're trying to do a fundraiser for his appellate defense. So I've been trying to help out as much as I can. I try to grift it and push his the fundraiser. He's a great guy. Solomon's a great guy. I've interviewed him and talked to him a lot. In fact, he went on Vice's this morning, and Judge Schroeder denied his right to speak on behalf of Zach during the sentencing yesterday. Nobody could speak on behalf of Zach during his sentencing, although they hauled up 6 or 7 people to speak on behalf of the state and the victim in this case. So Solomon was denied the opportunity to speak on behalf of his brother at his brother's sentencing. So Vice has had him on this morning to give his statement that he was going to give. So at least he could get it out there.
Right.
But no, he's a good guy. I think you should have him on, definitely.
All right. You can tell him to try to reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter at The Following Pro. I realize it's very late and you're actually a practicing attorney. So I'm still going to go through some super chats here, but I'm actually thinking that it seems like I normally kick the show over to Nick Rekieta after I'm done, and it seems as if he's not streaming tonight. I'm only guessing that because I don't see his stream anywhere, and I was looking near the end of when I got close to 12 o'clock, I reset my settings to redirect to him, and I'm not seeing him anywhere here, which tells me that he's probably not streaming. That being the case, I'm probably going to go a little bit longer. So I don't want to. I locked you up. I told you. I asked you for 2 hours.
You
gave me
promised
2.5.
midnight I'd be off. No.
Yes, I did. And I think you're an hour behind me, right? Are you an hour behind me?
No. We're Eastern.
Oh, you're East. Oh,
and
my
we
God.
follow New York.
Yeah, I feel badly. I should let you go a long time ago.
No,
I'm
no
sorry
worries,
about that.
I want
to urge you all. The link, you just click his name, sub up to this guy. He's smart. He's based. Great work product. You're going to love him. The reason I brought him on here, I want to see this guy's numbers. How many subs you at now?
1,200 some.
All right. So,
do
we see any movement? Any movement tonight?
I have to look. I gotta look. I don't know.
Right. We should get this guy up to 2,000. Easy.
Yeah, give me up.
Easy.
Oh, yeah. No, I got some movement. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm up to 13 now. 13.
All right.
So.
Sub up to David at Michigan Law Show.
Excellent content over there.
And what are you going to be covering soon? And speaking of which, by the way, I had this comment here before you leave. Stoked for having Dave on. Joe's discovered him with Letitia Stock. Had no idea about that case till the trial was happening, and his panel did great. Well, there you go. Look at that.
Yeah, so I'm going to be taking a bit of a break from doing current live trials just for probably the rest of this month. But we're going to start doing sort of a recap of Jodi Arias, me and another YouTuber, Nick, who's Swedish actually, and a labor law.
Starlo?
Yep.
Oh, he's a great guy. He watches
awesome.
the show a lot.
Yeah. Him and I are going to do sort of a joint Jodi Arias recap of that case. So that should be a lot of fun. And then we got Sarah Boone coming up. There's another trial. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but we're trying to plan some trial streams out. And then in between, we're doing some stuff. Like I just did sort of a comparison between Danish law, criminal defense, and American. Just because when I go over there, I kind of see what I need to avoid. But yeah, so we got some trials coming up, and it'll be a good time. Oh, also Crumblies. I got a whole bunch of stuff on the Crumbly parents. That's the Oxford school shooting.
Yeah. I know. I did a whole thing following that motion. I actually watched that motion, the oral arguments. I watched.
I did too. Yeah, I have their preliminary examination is up on my channel. I reviewed the Court of Appeals decision. I have a whole playlist dedicated.
Can you give me like your 90-second breakdown as to your feeling about the appellate court's ruling, the way they handled oral arguments and their ruling on that?
The oral arguments I thought were fair. When they first went, everyone was like, "Oh, they're really tough on the defense here," but then they were just as tough on the state.
Yes.
So I felt comfortable with that. What I thought they were going to come out of is basically saying, if the state has enough to prove that essentially Dad was a
just to
straw
pause
purchase.
for a second. The Crumbly case that we're talking about now, because we didn't give any background here.
Sure.
So if I could just explain this before you explain the ruling. So the Crumbly case deals with, it was that school shooting of which a kid basically was I think he had drawn like troubling pictures or something like that
on his math worksheet.
On his math worksheet, they called the parents in, and the parents basically came down to the school, and then instead of insisting that he come home with them or the school insisting that he leave, they figured it would be better for, I think there was a concern that was expressed during the course of oral arguments. There was a concern that he might harm himself if he was left alone.
It wasn't harm others, but harm himself that they were concerned about.
And so he didn't leave the school. He ends up shooting up the school. Now the parents are being charged with their criminal negligence in their role in not stopping him from or taking steps to stop him from carrying out this shooting. He's already been convicted he pled out to the murders. But so now that's the ongoing Crumbly case. It's the first of its kind in this country, which is one of the things that came up during oral arguments. Yeah. And I agree with you, by the way, in your take that I thought they were obscenely hard on the defense when in their questioning, and then obscenely hard on the state. And a lot of the questions they were asking there were the right questions that I wanted to hear the state answer. Like, isn't this the first of its kind in the country to say that parents should be held accountable for the psychotic actions of their child? That sounds like and distinguishing between the Head case, which was another Michigan case where there was that person in the Head case was more of a direct actor in motivating the person to carry out murder, as opposed to this one where they were not those type of actors. And I thought they were asking a lot of hard questions, but that's the case we're talking about here. So now give me your thoughts as far as on the ruling, like what came out of that.
Yeah. So what I thought they should do is, so one of the underlying things is whether or not the parents knew this child had things or, had issues. And I don't think they did, but even if they did they essentially give him permission to have access to this gun and to do the things he ended up doing? I thought the court was going to say, if the state has enough evidence to substantiate the allegation that father was essentially a straw purchaser for this gun, then they can proceed with the charges. Because straw purchasing and giving him full access to the gun, if they had any evidence of that, I thought that's kind of where they were going to draw the line. But they didn't draw the line there. Right. Did you read the opinion?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I did. I definitely didn't read it on the air. That's for sure.
The concurring opinion is so much better. And I can't remember exactly what the actual opinion said and why. It opened it up too much. It was kind of meandering and it didn't really give a fine line, but basically said, yeah, we think there's enough that the state could prove. If they prove that he had a mental health issue and they prove that he had access to the gun, unfettered access to the gun, essentially, then they might be able to sustain this. And I don't think the Michigan Supreme Court is taking it up. It's going to have to go through trial first.
They're not taking it up?
I don't think so.
That's wild.
They have to get leave. Our Michigan Supreme Court is very much in favor of let the lower courts establish the evidentiary record and let it go through its normal process before it gets up to us. And so it went to them when the original appeal was denied, and the Supreme Court sent it back down to the Court of Appeals and said, you're going to have oral arguments on this, because oral arguments were denied. Leave for appeal was straight up denied by the Court of Appeals. And then the Supreme Court said, no, you're at least going to have oral arguments on this. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're going to go beyond that until after a trial.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is going to happen, this trial.
This is going to happen. This is absolutely going to happen.
What's the time parameter? What's the time parameter for when we should anticipate that trial, that coming to trial?
I don't know. I was looking last week to kind of get an idea, and right now it's on hold for the moment. Mm-hmm. They got I think because they filed leave to appeal to the Supreme Court, but that's going to end up getting denied. I would imagine November-ish, if I had to guess at the moment.
That's relatively soon.
Yeah, November-ish. And then, though, a good thing, the judge denied the state's expert witness on pathway to violence, which was great. And there's a great opinion that the judge wrote on why she denied the pathway to violence expert, which was essentially, they were going to say there were all these warning signs and the parents should have known. That was what the expert was going to say. And the judge was like, yeah, no, you can't. You yourself, expert lady, are telling me that you can't predict it. So how do you expect parents to predict it? So no, you're out.
That's what makes this entire thing so bizarre, because it's so unfair to I mean, everything about this is so messed up. Do I think that they perhaps were negligent parents? Yes. You want to tell me that there should be civil damages potentially? Okay. I can understand that. To hold them criminally liable for this, it implies a certain level of it's the equivalent of to say in general negligence with respect to criminal activity is already a shaky thing in my mind, because you should need a certain level of intent. And when I think they called their gross negligence.
Gross negligence is the standard that we're using here.
Yeah.
And it's essentially negligence.
Such a subjective term. Like, when does negligence become gross?
You put a little whipped cream on top.
All right, I'm going to let you go, my brother.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining me. I had a lot of fun. This was really interesting conversation. I see how you were worried we were going to die at 11:10, and I kept you till 12:40. So
No worries. I could talk all night long. But you go with your super chats and do your thing. And thanks again for having me on.
Thank you so much. Sign up to Michigan Law Show. The link is in the description below if you're watching afterwards or right now you want to bounce back over here. Make sure you hit the sub over to him. If I don't get him like at least 250 subs, like it'll be like people are like, why should I bother going on that show?
Yeah, right. I came here for all of your subs to join me. Yeah.
To lead that's how we all grow. We'll grow by leeching from others. Take care, my brother. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Have a good night. Bye. All right. So that was David Helm, Michigan Law Show. Good guy. I really like him. I hope you guys enjoyed him too. I found him to be really interesting. Just Me says you have to have someone being arrested for buying or selling an AR in order to trigger a case of irreparable harm. And on the other, if I get home invaded, that would. Yeah, it's you're talking about when we were discussing the Illinois ban on automatic weapons. Even it's not the fact that you don't have an automatic weapon. It doesn't, or it's not automatic. It's semi-automatic. The fact that you can't get access to this new semi-automatic weapon, it's a hard thing to establish that you needed specifically a semi-automatic weapon right here, right now, and now you're being irreparably harmed by not having it. It's a tough line. It's a very tough line that a pistol's not enough. It's hard. Do I think it's terrible law? Absolutely terrible law. It's ridiculous. I think it's an asinine law. But establishing that there's irreparable harm without you having it right now, and I can understand you saying, well, why is right now the next year or two different than for the next 50 years of me not being able to get it? I can understand you making that case, but it's unlikely a court's going to look at it that way. I'm just telling you reality. It's just reality. How easy to apply Michigan red flag to cops? So he was explaining that. It seems really easy. You just file a petition and you say, I'm a relative and he bought a gun and he's mean to me. He's mean to people. He's mean. He doesn't like himself. He was talking about how he hates his job. I think he's going to kill himself. Oh, take away his guns forever. My God. Gretchen Whitmer, you machshema v'zichra. Terrible human being. I know most of you don't know what that means, but you can figure out in context. Joe, you can buy your own fighter jet, tanks, cannons. There's a MiG for sale, Florida now, and ask Rob and Ian about tanks. And those are really extra special weapons of wars and used in zero crimes. Yeah, that'd be so cool. Oh my God. If I had a tank, oh my God. Where would I store it? I don't think I'd fit. I don't think my driveway could I don't think I could drive that down my driveway. It's probably too wide. How wide is a tank? Now I need to look this up. How wide is a tank? I'm sure it's more than 16 feet across. How wide is a tank? Be like a little Panzer. A small little Panzer. They're small. Oh man, this is not something I can just find really fast. Oh, they think I want a fish tank. No, I don't need a fish tank. An army tank. The MBT measures 9.7 meters long, 3.7 meters wide. That's it. Oh, maybe I could get a tank. Maybe I could. The dream is still alive. Miles, his son should be a biased, never be so. Thank you so much, Monk in Training. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that greatly. By the way, I got yesterday a Venmo sent to me, which I didn't get a chance to read out. I do have Venmo. I love when people super chat me on Venmo. It hasn't happened in a long time, but I did notice it, so I wanted to acknowledge it. Where was it? Venmo is the best. Where Melissa said, "Hi Joe, I have a friend who's so this is what she asked, right? I have a friend who's recently left an abusive spouse, and I was hoping to show her the PSA video you did with Rob, but see that it's now members only. The messages the two of you shared was pure gold. Can you please make the video publicly available? And what I'll say to you, Melissa, is yes. I really thought long and hard before I made that members only. I think the longer one. So, this guy here would just wish me having a biased Never Yisrael. I should have explained. That's a blessing that Jews give to each other when there's a wedding in the family, and it basically means that they should build a good house. It's a blessing that everyone typically gives to a new couple or to the parents of a new couple. And my son was got engaged last week to a phenomenal young woman who my wife and I are both big fans of. And it seems as if my son certainly is someone who her parents seem to really like. So this is really an awesome thing, and wish them nothing but the best. And the reason I'm bringing up in this context is because a lot of videos that I've done, I've basically made members only because in my circles, it's just the way things have to roll sometimes. So I make them members only just because people scrutinize me, and I don't want to ever be a negative impact on my kids. When people are looking at my children, they scrutinize for purposes of marriage. They don't just scrutinize my children; they scrutinize me and my wife. And in my circles, topics that I sometimes cover on here are topics that are not commonly discussed in most Orthodox Jewish homes, just because they're just disturbing topics, like the alphabet stuff. It just doesn't come up. We just don't talk about it. So the fact that I'm like sticking my hand in the bowels of America by even discussing this topic, even though I'm trashing the activities by and large, it just doesn't reflect well on them, and I don't want to ever be a negative impact on my children. That'd be a terrible thing. So yeah, there you go. So because of that, what I basically did was I made a lot of this stuff members only, including this thing about domestic abuse. But I think you're right. I think that I want to make that one. I was sort of torn about that one because I was like, I want to think about that. Like I said, I live in a world where I get scrutinized like I'm Clarence Thomas. Not by the public, not by you guys, but by people who almost never have ever watched any of my work content and are basically judging me by a completely different yardstick than what any of you would tend to judge anyone by. So, all right. Any suggestions on topics specifically you want me to cover? Because I'm really only running a little bit longer because I feel bad about that Nick is gone. And I really ran through every topic that I was planning on covering already. So if you have a suggestion, if you have something that you're like, hey, Joe, this is something I always thought that you should be covering, and I don't know how it is that you haven't covered it yet. So I'm giving you now a heads up. Throw it at me. Let me know what that topic is that you're like, hey, Joe, that would be really cool if you would cover it. I'm going to look first in my locals because locals people, my diggers in locals rule. So I have a live chat in locals, which is goodlogic.locals.com, and people schmoozing away in there and don't really. Yeah, Bud Light is the sort of thing that Lady Logic does not like me talking about. I will tell you this. See, here's a classic example. Okay, the whole Miller Lite thing, which you have to ask yourself, what are they thinking? What are they out of their minds? Like, you saw how going woke destroyed Bud Light, and we're only first starting to really see the financial impact this had on them. Now, Miller Lite, in case you're unaware of it, which I can't believe that many of you are unaware of it, but they basically made this whole commercial where they were claiming that beer was invented by women. If not for women, there wouldn't be beer. And they're now celebrating that this is the beer now, that Miller is the beer that's celebrating women. Which is okay. I'm not saying there's any women are great, but you're not saying no one wants to sit there thinking like, yeah, I want to drink the beer that's celebrating women. That's just not that's not what your typical blue collar guy is thinking. You know which beer I want to get? I gotta figure out which of I'm looking at a cooler here. I'm looking at a refrigerator section here in my local local liquor store here, my local wine shop, and I'm trying to figure out which beer do I want to get. Oh, you know which one we need to get? Hey, Raj, you know which one we need to get? We need to get the one that stands up for women. Why? Because they now have this new program. This was the hilarious thing. They have this new program to recycle and make the world and make the environment a healthier place by basically taking cardboard, and that if you ship them cardboard, they're going to help turn that into fertilizer through compost. They're going to try to turn that into fertilizer for hops. And their aim is to then take those hops and give them to breweries, which are being controlled by women. And they're hoping to get 1,000 pounds of hops. Ooh, 1,000 pounds of hops. And they want to distribute this 1,000 pounds of hops to 200 different women-owned microbreweries, which is 50 pounds of hops a piece. Oh my God. How it's like, thank God these women, which I guess they're thinking that these women can't afford 50 pounds of hops. That's not even 50. That's 5. It's 5 pounds. It's a 5 pound. Oh my God. 5 pounds. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Our you know what? This microbrewery, despite being owned by a woman, which obviously women invented beer. Women were the matriarchs of beer. Somehow their microbreweries are struggling. They need help from Miller Lite, and when the rent check, when the rent is due, and they can't figure out how are we gonna manage to survive, and like manna from heaven, a 5 pound bag of hops, a 5 pound bag of hops just comes in the mail. You can tell that all the employee of the company will say, "Huzzah! The company is now saved. That we got this 5 pounds of hops from Miller Lite. Thank God! Thank God Miller came along and saved the company by sending us a free 5 pounds of hops." Oh my God, so if you want to be part of that campaign, you really should be supporting Miller, and I guess not buying that woman beer. And it makes me think to myself, I don't understand anything about this pitch. I don't understand anything about this. Do they think that these beer drinkers, your classic beer drinkers, are worrying, like the primary concern they have are the female microbreweries? And if your aim is not that demographic, if your aim is, hey, you know what? We want to pitch ourselves to the elitist New Yorkers, or the Michiganders who are, or in Minnesotans, I guess, in the great blue north. Why wouldn't those people just be buying from the women microbreweries? Why would they be buying Miller? If they really care about women and they care about support, showing their support for women, they want to show their support for women, why wouldn't they just buy the woman beer? Like the one that those female-owned microbreweries are actually producing, rather than just buying Miller? That seems like so backward. That seems like so ridiculous. That's like saying, oh my gosh, I really believe in this cancer foundation, so I'm going to support this cancer foundation by giving charity to this benefit for whales, because sometimes whales get cancer. It's like, how does that make any sense? If you care about women, if you don't care about women, then this commercial is kind of stupid. And if you do care about supporting women and female microbreweries, then just buy their beer instead of Miller. So what is Miller thinking when they're doing? I can't figure it out. And especially in the wake of everything that happened with Bud Light. I mean, let's face reality here. Anyway, apparently Miller has completely yanked the ad. Now, in the old days, when I wasn't being scrutinized, I would have shared that ad with you and we could have had a good chuckle about it together. But no longer. Those days will come soon, though. Trust me. I just need one more kid to get engaged. And then we're good to go. All right. So let me see. What topics were there? Did you guys give me a topic? By the way, Coors Light is no better. So really, we need to be banning Miller, banning Bud, and banning Coors. Just chuck your Coors also. Those three, just get rid of them. Schlitz. Heck, I would go Heineken. I'm a Jewish guy pitching for a German company. Go Sam Adams. Even though I always hated Sam Adams. First of all, I thought their beer was just with the flavoring just made it, to me, taste like skunky beer instead of being like good beer. It's like they're trying too hard. So to me, I always thought Sam Adams was like I was never a big Sam Adams guy. Yes, this is a good choice. Youngling. Dos Equis is pretty good also. Dos Equis is pretty good. Heineken's Dutch? Is it really? I happen to really like Youngling. I think Youngling has a really good taste to it. It's a very solid beer. I like that call. It's not charcoal filtered. I don't know what you're talking about. Let me go back to you people here, my diggers. Jumping into recent messages. New York City terrorist got 260 years? Really? Aussie Overlord is saying New York City terrorist got 260 years? Really? Really? I don't see that. I don't see that anywhere. I will tell you that Lady Logic likes she likes beer that has like a citrus kind of thing, like what's that one which has lime in it? I don't remember. I think she liked Bud Light Lime. Not that she's getting that anytime soon. But Landshark's not bad. Landshark's not bad. All right. Not seeing topics. If you guys don't feed me a topic, I'm sort of left wandering off. Blue Moon's okay. Yeah. I'm more of a tequila man myself. Currently, Lunazul. I never really liked tequila. Never a big tequila fan. All right. Yeah, Corona and lime is pretty good. We'll take an actual lime and cram it in there in the long neck bottle. Let me see if I'm sure there's one or two more things I can cover for you, because you guys are not giving me anything good to cover. But what I do is I sort of put stories away, and I'm like, hey, this is a good thing to cover at some point. Let me see if I have anything left here for you guys. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap. If it's something good, there's something good. I got the New Jersey thing. What's this? I don't remember what this is. Oh, I do know what this is. Oh, this is good. Oh, this is good. Oh, this was good. See, I'm glad I developed this habit that when I see something, I'm like, oh, this is good. And I know I'm going to forget about it. So I basically just send it to myself. And then I go into my chat, and basically moments like these, I have an arsenal of really cool things to share. And this one I really love. And I'll bet 90% of you never saw this. CIA and FBI have shown their behinds, reform or remove. Oh, get rid of. I'm so done with them. The more I read of that Durham report, the more I was like, I am so done with them. And somehow our country survived for like 150 years before the FBI came along. Do we need some sort of intelligence agency as to, like, you know, as far as, like, you know, foreign intelligence? Yeah, okay, fine. I'm so tired of the concept that we're spying on Americans, constantly spying on Americans. I'm done with them. This is what I wanted to share with you. This was great. The only thing congressional hearings are any good for, because I've pointed this out many times, the only thing that they're really good for are basically chips and giggles. That's it. Chips and giggles. Chirps and giggles. Because they don't pass any laws. Doesn't do anything there. It's just a matter of, let's get some screen time that you'll hear me talking and advocating for a position that my constituents really love hearing me talk about. Check this out. This is great. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. I was like, this is a fine, because I don't think anyone's seen this.
Thank you. And I just want
This is Congressman Eric Swalwell calling out the Republicans for having on a speaker whose Twitter handle is Fudbusters, and saying that, you know, I don't think it's right that you welcomed him here as a speaker when he basically said an expletive about the police. And here we go.
address Mr. Johnson, who said you brought the receipts. Well, Mr. Johnson, I've got some receipts for you. This committee met.
This guy, I like how he grew in like the facial hair so that he doesn't look like he's 12 anymore. But I'm sorry. Whenever I see him, I think to myself, such an airhead. And sitting next to him, that lying piece of Schiff, that complete lying piece of Schiff, how he's not hanging his head in shame after he went, because that is Adam Schiff sitting next to him there. You can see part of his face and all of his nose, which his nose must be growing and growing and growing every time he speaks. Who stood up on the news night after night for like a year saying, I have seen evidence that Donald Trump colluded with Russia, and all this evidence will come to light. You complete stinking liar. You waste of space, evil, corrupt human being. The two of you make me sick to my stomach. These two sitting next to each other, these two bosom buddies, both of them screaming about collusion forever, without having any evidence on it and zero ownership of it. And now they don't take ownership of that, but Eric Swalwell about to get owned.
About 2 months ago, and the chairman, who can call any person in the world who walks this earth as a witness, called this guy, who tweeted just a couple weeks before the hearing, "Fuck cops." Your witness tweeted that. Not one of you disavowed that guy. Not one of you said that was inappropriate. I was stunned that you call yourself a pro-police party and you bring a witness before us that says, fuck cops. I don't believe in that, but I thought if you didn't believe in that, you would have taken the opportunity to say it. But no, not only did you not disavow it, you invited the guy here in Congress to be your witness. Imagine if we had ever done that. We didn't. You did. Second, I would love Mr. Johnson to disavow, because by the way,
you hear what he just said? Imagine if we ever invited someone in here who would say something like that. Imagine if we ever would invite a speaker here who said that. It's like almost like he's taking a shovel and he sees the headstone. The headstone says Eric Swalwell. It says it. And he's like, wait, this isn't deep enough. Let's dig deeper. Dig deeper. Dig deeper. Dig it, Eric. Dig.
I will disavow the defund the police movement. I've never called for it.
I will disavow it. Oh, will you? Okay.
I believe, just as President Biden believes when he addressed Congress, that we should fund the police. But Mr. Johnson, will you disavow your colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who tweets out and makes money off of a defund the FBI movement? Because they're police too.
That's not the same thing at all. That's not the same thing. It's not like we just need to hire more and more police in general.
They protect us too. But I don't think you will. I think you're going to sit silent, and your silence, by the way, is complicity. I yield back.
Now, what would be really based is if one of them stands up and I'll say, in response, I'd like to say, defund the FBI. That would be based. But yeah, that's not going to happen. But
lady yields
still,
back. The gentleman
this is about
from
to be gold.
Virginia is recognized. Yield to the gentleman from Arizona.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Appreciate the backpedaling at an alarming rate from the other side. Watch out, you might fall over backwards. We have a video to play. I think this.
They have a video to play. A video to play. Like it's almost like they paid him to make that stupid claim. They were so armed and ready, and he just like splat like the complete Swalwell he is. Just walked right into that cow pie. It was like just hanging there on the wall, and he basically just like boom, boom, boom. They had a video ready to respond to him.
This will provide some visual summation, please.
This deserves to be big.
And the police has to happen.
Oh, Cori Bush!
The police.
Mayor Eric Garcetti saying, take some of the money from policing, about $150 million.
I applaud Eric Garcetti for doing what he's done.
Vice President!
Completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
It is outdated. It is wrong-headed thinking to think
Go,
that
Kamala.
the only way you
Go,
want
Kamala.
communities to be safe is to put more police
You go,
officers on
girl.
the street.
So yes, defund your butts. Defund you.
Yes, I support the
Jamal
reallocation of
Bowman.
resources from
the
NYPD.
big high talker who's pushing people around the halls of Congress. Jamal Bowman.
We will be moving funding from the NYPD.
Yes, I support the defund movement. I'm for responsible reallocation of resources
And defund the
Susanna Rice, who's one of like the most powerful people in the country right now.
police.
I think you do all those other things, you don't need all the money that's going to the police department. So yeah, I mean, the spirit of it, I do support that.
Yeah, and a lot of us were asked if we could imagine a future without police back in 2017 when we were running for office. And I answered yes to that question.
We are going to reduce funding in the police department and redirect that money.
We propose to redirect over $7 million from the police bureau.
The police department here in Minneapolis needs to be dismantled, and we need to start anew.
In some necessary cases, completely dismantling those police.
Kill him.
Police departments.
Head of the Judiciary Committee, Benny Thompson, of the J6 Committee.
A lot of municipalities and other entities. We need to look at those budgets, pull some of the money back.
But we talk about defunding the police, defunding the Pentagon.
My push is that we defund our police departments.
Defunding police.
Cori Bush, by the way, St. Louis, yeah, murder capital of the United States. Defund the police. Oh, Tell us, AOC, how do you feel?
This means defunding police. If these reports are accurate, then these proposed cuts to the NYPD budget are a disingenuous illusion. This is not a victory. The freshman Democrat adding, the fight to defund policing will continue.
Mr. Chairman, I also have several articles that I would like to submit for the record. Instead of reading all the titles, I'll just provide those to you if that's okay.
Without objection.
And I'll yield back to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein.
Would gentleman yield? Yield to the chair. Yeah, I would just say in response to the gentleman from California, of course we disavow that tweet. That is obvious. And if we'd have known that individual had that tweet out there, I doubt if he'd have been invited as a witness. With that, I yield back to the gentleman from Virginia. Gentleman yields back.
Look at that.
Just recognize
That
the
was
ranking
great.
member for any questions he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my Republican friends have called this.
I didn't see this. What is this? What is this? What is this? 2 days ago, Andy Biggs claps back at Jerry Nadler with Durham report after Democrat brings up January 6th. Ooh. Ooh. This could be good. This could be good. I can't believe that Swalwell walked into that. Oh my God, how he walked into that. That's great.
National Police Week. The chairman of the committee opened up his remarks by referring to National Police Week.
I haven't seen this
He
yet.
didn't say local police week or certain police week. He said National Police Week, and that's how my Republican friends have been advertising this week. And I'm just puzzled by the fact that when my Republican friends passed their rules package in January, they made in order a bill to recognize and praise all of our police. And it included local, it included the state police and the federal police. And somewhere along the line, a decision was made to change that. I mean, you made it in order, we were just waiting for it to come up. And you made a conscious decision to remove some of the police from this bill. Why did you do that, Mr. Biggs? I mean, what was the rationale behind going back, changing what you originally had brought forward? Why did somebody think it was a good idea to take out, for example, the Capitol Police?
So I would just think, I'd beg to differ with you. I think you're mischaracterizing what's happening here today. So for instance, in the Garbarino bill, that's assault against a law enforcement officer. Doesn't matter whether it's federal or local. The other one is actually for federal law enforcement officers. That's 3091.
No, I mean, the concurrent resolution that you are offering.
And then we get
focus on the local police. So somebody made a decision. Why did you do that?
And then you move to the third bill. So you're trying to couple, I think, the whole picture, and you're trying to say.
No, in the rules package.
I understand.
Yeah, you had a bill that, that basically recognized all the police.
That's correct.
Including the federal police.
And this package before.
And this
I don't
one
want to
does
interrupt.
that,
I'm
right.
sorry.
No, and I'm just curious. Like,
That's Jerry Nadler? That's Jerry Nadler? He's completely bald now? Is that really Jerry Nadler?
like who made the decision to say, well, we don't want to recognize.
Doesn't
the
sound like
Capitol
Jerry Nadler.
Police, or we don't want to recognize and praise the federal police.
I think that you're mischaracterizing this. And so let me just help you out. I want to help you out if I can. You've got 3 bills before you. That's the package for Police Week. And it includes federal, state, and local officers. And I just gave you the reasons why. I'll do it again.
Maybe.
H. Conres 40 does not, I could read it. It doesn't recognize federal police officers. I mean, I could, the original version that you introduced, that the Republicans introduced as part of their rules package that was going to be made in order did. And so somebody made a decision to narrow it. I mean, and it's because I'm assuming that.
It doesn't sound like Jerry Nadler.
40, when it says condemns calls to defund, disband, and dismantle or abolish the police, I'm assuming that that doesn't include Marjorie Taylor Greene's call to defund the FBI, for example.
So we're going to, I guess we're going to just keep talking past each other. This is not meant to be a single bill. This is a package of bills. That's what, and let me just remind you, I just want to remind you that every year that you guys were in charge, you passed a package of bills. That's what we do. We do pass a package of bills. And this bill, and this particular effort includes a package of bills.
So which part of this bill praises federal law enforcement officials?
I'm not sure that this
Officials?
particular bill by itself does.
So
But
that's my point. So somebody made a decision to do that. And I mean, and I don't really, and I don't quite, I mean, what is so controversial about praising the Capitol Police or the FBI? I know a number of members, and I think Mr. Biggs, including you, voted against providing the Capitol Police a Congressional gold medal. So I'm just wondering, what is the, is that, I mean, what is controversial about praising the Capitol Police? They protect all of our lives and the lives of our staff here.
Do they?
I don't think there's anything controversial in praising the Capitol Police. But I do think there is something controversial when you take a package of bills that are meant to be a package of bills, and you have the first bill that specifically applies also to the feds. You have another bill that applies to the feds as well. It applies to all of them. And then you get to this one, and this, so you're going to say, oh my gosh, you guys are just the most unreasonable folks.
Nothing in any of these bills praises the Capitol Police.
Why is there?
Is that what you're looking for?
Oh my gosh, why is there this need to continually pray? I don't understand this at all. I don't understand. I understand January 6th happened. I get it. It's 2 years later. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's 2 years later, and it's like, so I don't understand any of this. I don't understand the left's need to just continually just pump this empty statue up.
A sentence that says, "Oh,
well, I know
we've done that."
We shouldn't say empty statue. It's like, I don't like how many victory laps. How many victory laps do the Capitol Police need?
Not done that.
I'm going to yield to Mr. Nadler in a minute, but I'm just curious as to you had a bill that was introduced as part of your rules package, which included all the police, and now you have changed it. So I don't think it was an accident that you changed it. Obviously, I think some of your members wanted to fund the FBI, and some of your members are still, I have a problem with the Capitol Police because of what happened on January 6th. They don't like the fact that the Capitol Police defended this institution from.
No one has a problem with that. The institution should never have been assaulted. Everyone agrees that it should never have been assaulted. No one says otherwise. It's a matter of, I don't understand the how many decades are we supposed to continue giving accolades for something that happened 2 years ago?
From people who wanted to basically overturn the results of an election, and it's an inconvenient reality for them. But I mean, it'd be something. Something. I mean, so maybe that's it. I'm just trying to say, why was a decision made to?
So I'm happy to elaborate.
And in the markup, by the way, my understanding is in the markup, these things were offered and they were all rejected. Mr. Nadler, I don't know whether you want to.
So
Oh, here's Nadler. That's not Nadler. I knew that wasn't Nadler. There we go. There's your guy. There's our Nadler. That makes more sense. Okay.
Refers only to local law enforcement.
Right.
In every paragraph.
Right.
And it refers to the, in 2020, there was leftists and progressive politicians called for the defunding of the police. Was in 2020, there were 21,000 murders. We, the Democrats on the committee during the markup last week, offered repeated amendments to add federal police, to refer to the federal police that we were praising them to refer to the January 6th attack, not only to the 2020 Black Lives Matter riots. All of these amendments were either voted down by the majority, by the Republicans, or ruled on germane. Now, we thought they were all germane, but they were all ruled, but some of them were ruled on germane and the others were all voted down. So there was a conscious decision by the Republicans not to deal with federal law enforcement and not to deal with the January 6th insurrection, presumably because Donald Trump was responsible for the January 6th insurrection.
What a clown. What a clown. It's like, I don't know how it is that he manages to sneak that big red nose and the floppy shoes past the Capitol Police every day.
I yield back.
Mr. Biggs, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you want to take me down a rabbit hole, and that's great. That's great. No, I mean, you do.
This is this
is all about January 6th for you guys because you're a one-note piano. I get it.
No,
So when you start hitting the piano about January 6th, let's just say, I get where you're coming from, but let's also talk about the Durham report that just came out today.
all right.
So, and let's talk about this as what it is. It's a package of bills that deal with federal and local law enforcement.
So,
but it didn't deal with it the way you wanted. So now it's the January 6th issue. So I get it. That's all you got. So go ahead. Hang your hat on that.
Yeah, you guys made this decision, by the way, before the Durham report came out. I mean, you noticed this bill last week. I don't know whether you had an advanced copy of the Durham report, but I think the Durham report was a colossal waste of money. But let me just point out for the
Oh my
record, you brought
gosh.
it up.
Oh my gosh. A colossal waste of money. What about the Mueller report? What about that? Because that's what the Durham report said, that the Mueller report was a colossal waste of money. Idiots.
Federal prosecutors
Who
have
is this
secured
guy?
convictions or confessions from Trump's campaign manager, deputy campaign manager, fundraiser, chief strategist, national security advisor, 2 foreign policy advisors, his personal lawyer, and his accountant. And Trump has been charged with 34 felony counts, and a jury of his peers said that he is a sexual abuser. Special Counsel Mueller issued 25 indictments against Russian nationals who attempted to undermine the 2016 election at the orders of Russian President Vladimir Putin. And I did a cursory reading of the Durham report online. I don't see any indictments. I think a number of you were saying there'd be multiple indictments. I don't know, did I miss something? Were there indictments?
Well, I don't know who said there'd be multiple indictments, but what I do,
Mr. Radcliffe, who was a former colleague who served in the
but I would
previous
just
administrations, said lots of indictments.
So ask
Well,
Radcliffe about that.
I can't speak for Mr. Radcliffe, but I can tell you that trying to get an indictment out of Merrick Garland is going to be pretty darn hard. Unless you're a Republican, then you're likely to get indicted.
So essentially, I think what you're saying to us is that the reason why, for example, federal law enforcement was not included is because there are some of you who do not want to praise the FBI or
Because the
actually
FBI stinks.
favor defunding the FBI.
There may be.
Just say it. Just say it. Say it. Because the FBI is run by a bunch of corrupt hacks. And just because the Durham report finally came out a week later doesn't mean that we didn't all know it. That doesn't mean every one of their employees are, but you're talking about praising the heads of the FBI, and they stink. Why would we praise them? We should be firing them. They should be in some of them. They're the ones who are around in 2016. Some of them should be indicted.
I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I'm just going to point
Just because
out,
he didn't recommend to indict them, that's because its reality is Merrick Garland wouldn't. And if he did in Washington, D.C., they could literally have been they could have tried to assassinate Trump and not been indicted.
that this was intended to be a package of bills.
If anything, the Democrats would have been calling for those people to be getting their recognition. The attempted assassinators. Not that I'm certainly promoting that. I'm definitely not promoting violence. In case YouTube watching is confused.
You've honed on a thing that you don't like, which is January 6th. So I get it.
I mean, it's a very simple question. The Republicans in their rules package made a bill in order that praised all of our.
Just say
along the line,
the heads of the FBI stink.
And nobody can really explain to me why.
No one can really explain to us why we still need an FBI, which is corrupt.
For you, Mr. Biggs, it's a little bit of a side. This is a little off topic, but since you're here, I wanted to ask you. So I noticed things like the fact that on March 29th of this year, you introduced an astoundingly high number of bills, 521 bills, if I'm right, to slash funding for critical departments and agencies spanning the federal government, everything from the Council on Environmental Quality to the Office of Government Ethics, but over 500 bills. Right. Do you know how much it costs the American taxpayers for you to do that?
Yeah, but I know how much it would save if those bills were actually enacted. You know how much it would save if those bills were enacted?
Yeah, but I guess.
I mean, do you know how
Well,
much?
no, I guess, the deal is.
Give us the number.
You could have put on your website a list of the agencies you want to abolish or whatever, but you introduce 500 bills.
Yeah.
The government publishing office, GPO, alone, just them, it's $18,126.
So on the one hand, this is the contradictory position that this individual is taking here. On the one hand, he's saying that Durham should have gone through the motion of recommending indictments, which never would have been followed up with. That wouldn't have been a waste. That would have been totally fine. But Congress should not do their job of actually proposing bills to save money just because the Senate will never pass it. Like, how does that add up? Like, what world are you living in?
Supposed to be precise. That's just to make publicly available your 521 bills. I ask unanimous consent to insert the GPO letter in the record. And that doesn't take into account.
Without objection.
That doesn't take into account the costs incurred by the clerks to process the bills, the parliamentarians to review and refer the bills, and
Why?
so on. So
Should we
you
think that
wasted
every
over
one of them is going to be
$18,000 of
rejected?
Taxpayer dollars in what? I guess an attempt to make a point about spending. But the ironic thing is that while you're decrying wasteful spending, government spending, you're wasting taxpayer dollars on a stunt and that's it. It's a stunt. And if every member of Congress basically did what you did, we would that would be over 200,000 bills at a cost of nearly $8 million. So I pointed out because I know everybody around here likes to make all kinds of statements, and they think it's, I don't know, noteworthy or whatever, but there's a cost to all of this.
Now you're worried about cost.
And I just thought.
Now you're worried about cost. He's trying to save money, and you're worried about cost of him creating a bill. Oh my gosh!
Because I hope others don't follow your example by doing the same thing, because it will cost millions and millions of dollars.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because it's obvious that you didn't look too closely, nor did you consider how much that would have saved. If those bills would have been enacted, it would have saved over $100 billion a year.
Well, you could have introduced them all as one bill too, and you're in charge, so you guys can do whatever.
If it was as one bill, it definitely would have been rejected. If it's 500 bills, maybe some of them will be accepted. Oh,
you want to bring up?
Look,
but I just pointed out for the record.
Yeah, it's beautiful that's your issue. But I mean, I get it. Everybody around here's a political figure, and we do a lot of political things, and we're trying to make a point. And you know what? If those bills were enacted, you'd save $100 billion a year. You'd save over
that's not a good answer.
Dollars over 10 years. That's what you would get. And so I was happy to do it. I would encourage my colleagues to take a close look at those bills and see what they want to enact, and that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, I just said that's a waste of money to do it that way. But what I am concerned about,
I don't know why he didn't give the answer I just gave. That if I give it to you as 500 separate bills, maybe some of them you'll pass. I know you're not going to pass it all. It would be a stunt if it was all enacted. It was all put forward as 500 that will never pass. But if you do it as separate bills, then you could pick and choose which ones you like. I don't understand why he didn't say that.
Is the intentional omission of men and women who serve our country, who protect us, who are part of our police force, who deserve to be recognized. And a decision was made, an intentional decision was made to change what my Republican colleagues introduced as part of their rules package in January. This is a much different bill, and I still don't know why. So in any event, I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I don't know. I don't know who he is. All right.
We have 2 or 3 nominations.
Okay. I can't. All right. Who is this guy and how did he get elected? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. They didn't put his name up there. It was blocked by the Chiron. Is it a Chiron or a Chiron? I don't know. Or is it a Cryon? I don't know. I'm going to answer that question right now. Let's see what we say. Chiron, Chiron. What do you guys think? Chiron and Chiron. How do you pronounce?
We are looking at how to pronounce this word that designates an electronically generated caption superimposed on a television or cinema
Just
screen.
say it!
Essentially, the graphics
Say it!
and text that you see
Say it!
when you're watching the news on your television, for
Oh my
example,
gosh.
generally on the lower third of your television set of your screen. So how do you go about pronouncing this word? Simply Chiron. Do not say Chiron or Chiron. Chiron is a car. This is Chiron. Chiron, Chiron, Chiron.
Right, you just said Chiron. Which is it? Chiron or Chiron?
On.
You stink. That was so bad. Wait, is this a different word?
We are looking at how to pronounce these names and more confusing vocabulary, many mispronounced, so make sure to stay tuned.
The internet is
Learn more
crazy.
and become part of their community.
Oh my
so how
gosh.
do you pronounce that? Well, this is the name of a character from Greek mythology.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not going to work. All right. I'm running out of stuff here. Let me see what else I had put away. Let me see if there was anything else that was good. Covered that. What's this? I covered that. What is this? Oh, this person made me mad. But this is going to be like Jew stuff. Yeah, I don't want to get into a whole anti-Semitism thing. I'm not in the mood for that. It's going to ruin my mood. All right. I think that's it. I think I covered it. Scroll up, Joe Neerman. What am I supposed to scroll up to? ADD. I'm looking at locals. Colorado man trades places with dog during DUI arrest. Okay. Let me see this. Colorado man. Can I get a video? Because that would be like way better. No, that's not good. Definitely want a video. Sounds like it has potential. What do we got here?
In Southeast Colorado, police say a man tried to get out of DUI charges by putting his dog actually behind the wheel of his car.
This is genius. This is genius. Because you can't prove that the dog wasn't driving. You can't prove it. You don't know.
This is a new one. Springfield is about a 4-hour drive from Denver, and about 1,300 people live there. So when someone drives down Main Street going more than 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, there's a good chance you're going to get pulled over. Police say that's what happened Saturday night. The officer says he then watched as the man switched places with his dog. The man eventually climbed out of the passenger side. He claimed to have not been driving. When asked how much he'd been drinking, that man then ran. The officer apparently didn't run very fast. The man didn't, at least. The officer was able to catch up with him within about 20 yards of that vehicle.
Seriously, serious topic, but not as
We need the body cam footage. We need the body. How do we know that this was a lawful arrest? We demand the body cam footage. I demand it. I must see the body cam footage. I want to see him come over to that roll down window with the dog sticking his head out. License and registration. I wasn't driving. It was the dog. I don't know why he's speeding. I'm always telling him to slow down. I don't understand, officer. This is totally. He's a crazy driver. No, that was a good one. That was a good one, Aussie. Aussie. That was a good one. It was short. It was short, but it made its point. Let's see what else you gave me here. He gave me a few. All right, let's check out this one. Let's see if this is any good. How old is this? Oh, that's 10 years old. More messages. Scroll up. You tell me to scroll up. I'm scrolling up. Settle the Deutsche Bank is paying $75 million to settle the Epstein case. Let's see what this. What did you give me here? Yeah, I don't want to cover a terrorist. I remember this happening. Unrepentant and defiant Islamic extremists received 10 life sentences and another 260 years in prison on Wednesday for killing 8 people with a truck on a bike path in Manhattan on Halloween in 2017 as the judge decried his callous and cowardly crimes. Quote, the conduct in this case is among the worst, if not the worst, I've ever seen, said U.S. District Judge Vernon S. Broderick as he announced the sentence designed to underscore the level of his criminality. That's gonna just depress me. 805 is best beer. Deutsche Bank to pay $75 million. Let's see if there's anything else. Let me check out Rumble. Nothing. All right. Oh wait, I got a vid here. Someone in Rumble's made it. There's a 9-minute video of Glenn Beck. 9 minutes is a little bit of commitment. It's a little bit of a commitment. It's a little bit of a commitment. I'm not feeling it. If it's only 9 minutes, I'm going to have to be like saying at some point, heck yeah. I'm not feeling like I'm going to. All right. I think we covered it. I think we did our work for the night. All right, my friends. I think I'm calling it here. It's 1:40. I've been going at this for 3.5 hours. So tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to be here. If I am, it's going to be late. Remember, I had a wedding on Sunday. Well, there's like a post-wedding party, which we call Sheva Brachas, which is going to be tomorrow evening. And it's probably going to start at 7 o'clock, and it's probably going to run for 3 hours, and it's like an hour away. So I'm doubtful I'm going to be here. Maybe I'll do maybe I'll do a locals. Oh, that's a good idea. Tomorrow evening, I'll probably do a locals in lieu of my regular show. There you go. There you go. Goodlogic.locals.com. That's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow evening, show is off. I'm going to do a locals instead. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, you can find me there. It's very easy. Goodlogic.locals.com. That's where you'll find me. For now, sub up over here. I thank you for joining me. Like, share, subscribe, drop a comment down below. Tell me whether you want me to have, whether you think I should bring him back. I'm probably going to. But if you want me to bring Michigan Law Show, spread the love. I appreciate it. I thank you all for joining me. And until next time, Godspeed. Locals! Locals! Locals!